OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
A very good morning to you. It's Wednesday, the 14th of June. You're very welcome along to OTB AM, the Sports Breakfast Show from Off the Ball. If you want to get in touch, we'd love to hear from you. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. You can, of course, text that number if you want, but you can also get us at Off the Ball AM on Twitter or subscribe on youtube.com/Off the Ball and leave a comment there. Shane, good morning to you.
Morning, how's all?
Kathleen, good morning to you.
Morning.
Where do we want to start today?
I do want to start with how at Christmas I remember looking at the Republic of Ireland fixtures and thinking that Greece game away in June is so far away, and now it's like I just heard you reading at the 14th of June there and I was like, oh lads, what? So yeah, I'm having an existential crisis over here at how fast time moves on. But anyway, sorry.
Time is going seriously quick at the moment.
The Greece game is upon us all of a sudden.
It's a flat circle.
Yes, it's a construct of human perception.
Even it's like 3 weeks until I fly out to Australia for the World Cup, which is insane. I was like, oh, that's so far away whenever we beat Scotland. And now it seems very, very close. And I get more and more sick about the opening game the closer it gets as well, so that's fun too.
Sick because?
Just nerves, because I just don't know how we're going to perform on that sort of like international stage. You know, this team has never performed in front of that many people on such a like high profile, high intensity event, and obviously with Australia being hosts as well, it adds an extra sort of layer to their performance. You know, are they going to be able to handle the pressure? It's just a hard one. We assessed it on Quigig this week, and we looked at all 3 matches and like all 3 teams and what we actually expect from them, and in some ways we've almost focused too much on Australia because it is that opening game and forgot the fact that we have to play Olympic champions straight afterwards. But yeah, just nervous. It's the unknown, I suppose. That's the thing.
And not excited as opposed to nervous? Like the overriding thing is nerves?
Probably overriding is more nerves than excitement at the moment, which is strange. I don't know. There's part of me that's like, oh, if I was at home, would I be more excited because I would just be looking forward to watching it with like friends and family and stuff, whereas being over there, I'm like, you know, you're working on it, you have to, like, tournament life can be kind of tough as well, and especially the fact there's a lot of travel involved and stuff. I think that's probably been to the front of my mind more so than the football the last while, but I'm sure once I get over there and I kind of get into the atmosphere and remember the fact that half of Australia is made up of Irish people anyways.
The pressure's almost off at your first World Cup. I almost feel, and hear me out, I almost feel like Australia scoring within the first 10 minutes is the best thing for us. Like, as in, all the pressure, all the weight of expectation on the tournament all of a sudden goes out the window when you fall behind in the first game. You're like,
traditionally, us scoring first in the first game of a major tournament is good for us.
True. Historically speaking, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say no to an Irish goal.
Let's go too early there. No.
Yeah,
so.
I don't know. We haven't done that badly when we've gone down by a goal, but I just feel like the mentality aspect is going to be the thing that Vera is going to have to get very right, and I don't know how much you create that if you're between Abbottstown, UCD and Tala for the next, couple of weeks. But,
they're all very close. What? Sorry, hang on. What's the problem?
No, but as in like, how do you replicate, or how do you kind of get people in the headspace for?
Well, they're hanging out. They all seem very relaxed. Everybody seems happy. People are signing new deals and getting new contracts. And there's a
that's what I mean. You're going from the complete familiar of those like 3 relatively smaller places to like flying halfway across the world to play in front of 80,000 people. I'm just saying that how are you building that mentality? I'm curious to see how Vera does it over the next couple of weeks. I mean, we'll be hopefully speaking to her on Friday, and if not, early next week. So,
well, they've managed so far to get up for all the stuff they need to get up for, right?
Yeah, but different story. This, like, we've never been in a major tournament.
Positivity,
before.
Come on, let's get positive here. we're closing down on it. 5 weeks. Is it 5 weeks? You said?
Yeah. Until First game's the 20th, so yeah, we're 6 days out from the 20th of June.
And Shane, what are your nerves like for the game in Athens?
Do you know what? I fancy Ireland, and that seems like a strange thing to say because hear me out.
Positivity, Shane.
Yeah, exactly. Greece did well in their Nations League group. but I think it's too. Greece like to keep the ball the same, almost in a similar vein to Stephen Kenny, from what I hear. So it'll be a fascinating battle between two teams, but I like to hear how much they're talking about how acclimatised they are to the weather, because that was a concern, I think, when you saw the away fixture to Greece. You're like, oh, this is going to be tough from a heat perspective, but they've done the whatever it was, 4 days in Bristol. They took a week off with their family, and now they've had 9 days in Turkey in fairly significant heat, so they're acclimatised to that by now, you'd imagine. And from a team perspective, I mean, they're raring to go. Like, John Fallon got me excited yesterday when he said, and all it took was him saying Evan Ferguson was looking sharp, and I just went with it, you know. I spoke to Denis Irwin yesterday, the Aviva, and he's reasonably optimistic as well. And of course, we ended up talking about Evan Ferguson, but I'm optimistic. I think we can get a win, but I'd absolutely take a draw.
We are obviously coming off a different run of form to Greece, who, as you say, topped their group. Now, look, their group was a tier below our group, but it wasn't particularly different in terms of quality. They had Northern Ireland, Kosovo, Cyprus. That was it, I think. Was it a 5-team group? Yeah.
And you would expect them on paper to top that group, but at the same time you have to go and do it.
Yeah, exactly. Look, there's no way of undercooking this. It's the most important game of the Kenny era. There's a lot riding on it. If we get beaten, it's a really long way back from there. I mean, look, this group, I don't think was ever going to be our pathway to qualification, really, but you need to see improvement in results. We've seen improvement in performances, but we haven't seen it convert into points and an outcome where everybody's going, okay, I see what you're trying to do, and I see how it's effective. Now, I personally think it is relatively effective, given that we haven't had that much quality in the team. We've got slight improvement in quality in the team at the moment.
Yeah. Also, the Greece, because of that, those results in the Nations League, they've already secured a place in the playoffs for the Euro 2024.
So it technically doesn't matter then if they finish above us? So
pressure, you can look at that too, as pressure's off them, or their motivation maybe isn't as high as Ireland. So there is that, and you can interpret that whatever way you want. But I'm excited. Like, I was listening to Gus Poyet during the week, and he was referencing John O'Shea, of course, a member of the Republic of Ireland backroom team, and he said John is a future Irish manager if he keeps going, because he was his captain when Poyet came into Sunderland. They were in absolute turmoil. I think they'd 14 or 15 new players. They'd 1 point from 7 games early in the season, and O'Shea was club captain, and he said O'Shea just sorted him out and was his go-to guy. So he was full of praise for Ireland's backroom man. But in any massive, and Stephen Kenny referenced this, in any massive Irish qualification campaign, there's always been big wins, away wins, against these types of teams, Cyprus or Georgia, Armenia, teams of this kind of level.
I think Greece are vastly superior to those teams, and as was evidenced by the fact they just won a group with them. But go on.
But I think, I'd argue that Greece are probably similar to maybe Georgia and Albania maybe that year, and Armenia. I don't know if they're much further above that. I look.
Did they not have the top scorer in the Eredivisie?
Yeah, look,
the player at Liverpool.
We have a man banging in goals in the Premier League. It doesn't mean
Well, we've got one player who's played 15 games in the Premier League.
Yeah, who were getting.
We had a full match day where we had no players at all playing in the Premier League.
It's true. I just think you need to be winning in a big away game like this to really have a push with the team and to go for qualification. Like, and Stephen Kenny will know that. The Gibraltar game, all of a sudden on Monday, if you lose this game, it's must win, and Ireland will probably win that match at home. But
yeah, it is must win either way, no matter what happens.
Yeah. It just adds pressure, doesn't it? I think Kenny was referencing the 2 goals we scored against Latvia recently, where you had 26 passes in the build up to one of them, 20 passes in the build up to another one. So at least there's something that's happening with this Irish team, and they're scoring goals that we haven't been used to maybe them seeing. But
does a loss on Friday change anything for the rest of the qualification period?
I know that
not in terms of like the actual, like, obviously a loss affects the rest of the qualification period, but I mean in terms of like,
it depends on the loss, really, doesn't it?
I was just going to say that, though. People have been saying that. Does it matter, like the nature of the loss?
If it's 1-0, it's tight, we've played really well,
I think there's devastation. Well, if it's 3-0 and it's comprehensive and we don't show up, if we look tired in the heat, even though we've done all our stuff. So we're ranked 49th in the world, and Greece are ranked 51st. So there's like 52nd rather. So like there's a hair's breadth between Ireland and Greece. I wouldn't be making us favourites to.
and a lot of those players went weeks and weeks without playing football until they got together in Bristol.
Yeah. Is that a good thing or a bad thing at the end of the season? I can't tell, because like they've obviously played a gazillion games to get to this point of their careers, and is a month and a half out of action, or 3 months out of action, or 8 months out of action in some cases, is that a disaster, or is it like no big deal? Does it leave them refreshed?
I think it very much depends on the players individually and also the team itself and how they're being managed. Like, I don't know, you look at the GA example, a lot of people said that the break did teams like Mayo good. You might say the result after that said it didn't do them all that well. But, you know, I think it's such a hard thing to quantify unless you're in with those players every single day to actually know how much it has affected them. And even if they come out and don't play great on Friday, I don't know how much of that can be put down to having a break. I mean, we keep saying that we need to give players more breaks anyways, so
it's one of those things. I think that I've enjoyed being in the hotel in the camp together. Callum O'Dowd referenced that during the week. It almost feels like tournament vibes in the build up to this Greece game, where they're having a lot of time together, a lot of downtime together, playing. I don't know what they're doing do they have a pool table or whatever in the hotels, but it's probably a good thing for them that they've been in this little camp in the build up. I mean, it can only improve your focus and concentration when you have 9 days in a warm weather experience before a big match like this.
Yeah, we're talking ourselves into all sorts of
I know.
I thought it has been interesting, like just reading the different interviews though coming out for players. Like Troy Parrott was in the paper today, Callum O'Dowd, Nathan Collins was in yesterday, there's been a couple of others as well. There seems to be a kind of introspectiveness or something to a couple of the players and the way they're talking, because like a lot of them either haven't had great seasons, or you know, maybe their contract situation isn't all that certain, or they've been suffering with injuries. And I don't know, there's just been reading some of the interviews they've been given, there seems to be a maturity or an acceptance of where they're at, but also a real want to push on. And I'm not saying that's necessarily going to reflect right now for like the Greece game on Friday. I don't know, is that a byproduct of the fact they've been in this camp with Stephen Kenny and whatever he is saying to them. But yeah, I just thought it was an interesting trend throughout all the stuff that's been coming out from the team. Yeah. Generally there's like one or two people that kind of come out and they're a bit like jokey or having the crack, whereas all the interviews seem quite reflective of where players are at for different reasons.
Yeah, I think that's the key point there that you made about them coming back from injury or out of the team. Like at the start of the year, we thought Nathan Collins was going to be, you know, contending for a move to a contender, and instead he's not in the team. And Troy Parrott was obviously clearly upstaged by Tom Cannon, who would have been in the squad if Tom Cannon had decided he was Irish, I think, ahead of Troy Parrott, and if things had gone a different way. So you know, Parrott's talking about getting back to Spurs and trying to impress Ange, and how he's a Celtic fan and how that really is still his intention. And then they list off all the clubs that he's been on loan, and he just hasn't done enough. Like he's not a Premier League striker, he's not of Premier League quality at the moment. That's not to say that he can't get some of that maturity into his game and become more aggressive and more ruthless and create better chances, but it just hasn't happened for him yet. So maybe Ange sees something in the way that only Ange can see, and he finds a role for Troy Parrott, but it's getting squeaky bum time in terms of, you know, his career. So he could do with a good showing.
Yeah, the likes of a Michael Obafemi as well. Like I was kind of saying yesterday, I'd prefer to see, if it is a choice between Mikey Johnston and Michael Obafemi, I would like to see Mikey Johnston given an opportunity. Like he's that lively player. I think he's still playing his club football in Portugal. Yeah, with Victoria, and like, used to the heat. I don't know if that's probably not something that they take into account.
Shane, you're very concerned about this heat.
I just know as someone who had to play in heat in a cup final in Monaghan a couple of weeks ago. It's not easy, and I'm not a professional footballer, so these lads are more used to it. But if a player is used to the heat, I mean, throw him in. Like, why not?
Well, maybe he comes on for the last 20 minutes. He seems more effective as a bit part player at the moment.
I'm trying to be positive. I'm looking at Greece's results here. So from the last couple of years, the World Cup qualifiers like drew with Spain away 1-1. Their home record is quite good. Like they beat Sweden 2-1 at home. They lost away then in Athens with 10 men. They only lost at home 1-0 to Spain in that qualifying campaign as well. And then the North, when they went to Greece, they lost 3-1. So I don't know. But then again, their last match was the 27th of March, Greece at home, 0-0 draw against Lithuania in a friendly match. So that's a similar enough result that we would have achieved it at home against Lithuania. Didn't we draw 1-1 with them? So we are very much on a par with them.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. This is a toss of a coin game. Although they're mad favourites, they're touching evens, and we're nearly as big as 3-1 for the game.
Right.
So big outsiders for this, and we'll get Vinny Perth's team at around about 8:50 this morning. Here's what's coming up between now and 10 o'clock for you on OTB AM. If you have any thoughts on this, by the way, you can leave a comment if you want. So coming up, we have Tommy Rooney's power rankings at 8 o'clock. We'll bring you the sports pages at 8:35. One JD, please, with John Duggan and Virtual Insanity, and news breaking that Jay Monaghan is not currently the CEO running day-to-day operations at the PGA Tour after a medical condition. As I said, Vinny's coming in at 10 to 9. We've got Deal or No Deal at the start of the transfer window, officially open today. 10 past 9, we're going to play out with Denis Irwin, I think, are we?
No, Gabriele Marcotti.
Right.
He's trumped him. He's only an Irish legend, like. It was a great interview I did. I was a little bit not starstruck, that's the wrong word, but Irwin is one of those players when I was younger. Like, when you have a fullback that takes free kicks and penalties, just adds a little bit of mystique and intrigue to the whole thing. Oh, it vastly improves his value to the team, and everybody appreciates him much more. He said that, I was asking about the penalties thing and free kicks, he said you have to naturally be good at free kicks, and he was. Like, he practiced them of course, but he was naturally good at them. And then when it came to penalties, he joined the club when Steve Bruce, of all people, was kicking penalties for United. Cantona came along, and then after that, like Teddy Sheringham, when he signs for United, is given the penalties, misses his first 3. And then Irwin is Ferguson just says to Irwin, it's you, like. So sorry, I shouldn't have cheated on you with him, but you know, he's very posh, and he's very glamorous. Yeah, we'll try Teddy, and like, you know, yeah, exactly. But what a player. Like, I don't know if underrated is the word you use for Denis, but so underrated is overrated is the cliche, right? Possibly. And what were you talking to him about? Like we discussed a lot of things. So obviously it's a tough week for Denis Irwin as a United fan with the treble being trumped by Manchester City. We possibly have a clip of Irwin talking about Evan Ferguson here. So of course we had to ask him about Evan Ferguson the week that is, and of course John O'Shea's comments on our roadshow recently cropped up. So this is a short clip of Denis Irwin talking Evan Ferguson. Given it's the week of the Greece game as well this Friday for the Republic of Ireland, about our own man, and not to get the hype train going too much, but Evan Ferguson, and look, there are these constant links. We had John O'Shea on a roadshow with us recently, and he was suggesting he might potentially break Robbie Keane's goal scoring record at senior international level, which is a big thing to say. Where do you think Evan Ferguson can go? What's the ceiling for him?
Well, Shazy knows him because Shazy's involved a bit more, and if he's saying that means we've got a hell of a centre forward on our hands, because Robbie Keane was a brilliant player. It's an area we've been lacking for a number of years now. A lot of our goals have come from centre halves and from set pieces. Great at it. He's at a really good club. He's learning the trade there, not just in goal scoring, but the way he links up as well. I think the manager at Brighton encourages as much football to be played as possible in a different kind of style. But yeah, he's going to be under so much pressure as a young lad here, particularly here for Ireland. In Brighton, I think he'd be fine, but with Ireland, you know, he's the one that we've been waiting for, and got a couple of big games ahead of us now. Let's hope that he scores. But very high praise from Shazy, because he's seen a lot of good centre forwards, and Robbie Keane was a great centre forward. He's banging the goals and scored one the other night in Soccer Aid, great goal in off the post. He can still score. You never lose that.
He didn't do the cartwheel, did he?
I didn't see it. I don't know.
Do a mini cartwheel maybe for a man of his age.
Oh, he did do the cartwheel. That's shots fired. Sorry. Yeah, you're gonna be getting. What was it? You're gonna be getting in trouble. He totally did the cartwheel.
Full blown, like. Yeah. Not a little tailored back version.
No, he did the rollover. It's I mean,
slower bit probably than it.
I mean, look, why are you an ageist prick?
I don't know. Because I'm young. Because I'm still fresh.
You're not though. You're like you're
get up there and do a cartwheel. We'll get Emma to throw the whole thing on frame.
I can't do it.
Well, there you go. Yeah. There you go.
Sorry, Robbie. Apologies, Robbie.
Man in the arena, not you.
I hadn't seen your.
What happened when you scored a hat trick that one time for Monaghan Town?
Yeah, probably against some. Robbie's probably scored his goal past an actor from The Only Way Is Essex. It was Soccer Aid.
Good goal, Tom.
Yeah. So not that he was.
Anyway, the most important point. Denis Irwin was there, kind of. You know, if that's what Shazy says, he's obviously seen a lot of him. Why are you talking him up, John? Why are you? Do you know? A lot of pressure on him, especially here with Ireland.
But Irwin did say there he's the player we've been waiting on.
Oh, totally. There's nothing else. So tell me, He does look like he's in good shape.
Dennis.
Yeah.
Oh, proper Nick. I think he's 57.
Happy to put on the jersey. So
100%. Of course, he was plugging the United Athletic Bilbao friendly match for later in the summer, August 6th. And
they don't really need to plug that, do they? I suspect that's going to sell out straight away.
Surely. And the ticket price, I think, ranging from 35 to 85 for that match, depending on where you want to sit. But yeah, it's one of those games you don't really have to plug. He's got a lovely gig, doesn't he? Like as ambassador for the club, just going around and doing all these.
It doesn't mean he can't tell you what he really thinks about certain things, because he obviously is a club employee.
True. If you listen to the full interview, like he is though quite, albeit he can't say certain things, he's quite interesting on Ten Hag. And the signings he made last year, and how poor the club were the season before last. Which is
with Solskjaer.
Yeah, the season they finished 6th, but not just 6th. It was just performance-wise. He said it just wasn't anywhere near good enough. But he was like even his memories of rooming with Roy Keane. He spoke, because Roy Keane has spoken in the past about rooming at club level and international level with Denis Irwin, and he said he was annoying because Denis always wanted to turn on the golf. And I put this to Denis Irwin, and he said, "Well, Roy was just mad to watch Coronation Street." So he's thrown Roy under a bus there, because I thought Roy was more of a rugby league man or a bit of other sport. But
you kind of see him enjoying something like Coronation Street.
Yeah.
You know, just everyone kind of shouting the drama. There's plenty of things for him to give off about and be like, what is he doing?
So once he said it, I was like, that makes sense that Roy would be into Coronation Street, I think. But he was even his memories of that treble team in '99. And like just his whole story about signing for United was incredible. Like £625,000 from Leeds, from Oldham. He was a trainee at Leeds, but he's one of those players that you look back on. I told him yesterday I was at his 500th appearance for United, which was Paddy's Day 2001 at Old Trafford against Leicester. And like, you think of all the trophies he's won in that red jersey. Like, he was a veteran by the time the Champions League final in 1999 came around. I think he was 33 or 4, so he said he was able to appreciate it more maybe than some of the younger players. But then you look at Jack Grealish and he's appreciating
well, he didn't play well.
No, he didn't play well, of course. And Irwin missed the FA Cup final in that treble year as well against Newcastle through injury. I think we have a clip as well which kind of sums up, and it's done reasonably well on the social media as well. For anyone who hasn't seen the full interview, it's obviously up on youtube.com/off the ball. But I guess that question of, was Irwin rated, was he underrated, was he appreciated, is he appreciated more now than he was back then? So I put that question to Dennis. Have a look. More appreciated as a footballer now than maybe you were at the time, because I know you were obviously appreciated back then. I remember being at your 500th appearance, I think it was, for United. It was Paddy's Day 2001 against Leicester. I remember being at Old Trafford that day and think, this is amazing to have an Irish player who's made this number of appearances. You regularly appear now in all-time 11s for both club and country. So do you feel like maybe now you're more appreciated as opposed to how you were during your career?
I think when I played, I was in a bit of a bubble. I just wanted to do the very best I could for the amount of years I played, so you kind of block out a lot of noises and just get on with it, and I think it's only when you come away from that, and particularly these days now they have so many polls and different things going on, that obviously my name keeps getting resurfaced and all that, which is brilliant, because and fans come up to you even whether you're abroad, even on holiday, and so thanks for the memories and all that. But when I look back on it, it was a great time to be not just a Manchester United player. I was a Wolves player growing up. To finish 2 years with them, and also to have like 9 or 10 great years with Ireland as well. It was a great time to be a footballer. From my point of view, I didn't see it as a job. I had great people around me, players. We had good fun under great managers, and it was just a great time. But it's good to look back on it now. I was not one for watching matches for years and years, but obviously there's that many matches come on now, you're kind of forced to watch it. But yeah, I probably appreciate it now 20 years down the line than I did when I played, but that's probably my fault as well.
Yeah, he is definitely more appreciated. There's been a revision of his standing in the game.
Yeah, and as I said to him there, he's in all these all-time 11s for club and for United and Ireland, and I think rightfully so. It's hard to oust him from that left back position.
Patrice Evra was pretty good.
Yeah, he was decent.
Do you think there's anyone playing now that will be the same, particularly on a United front? Kind of tough with the teams they've had over the last couple of years, but
like Rashford has a chance, right? If he stays and was to have that burst of form that he had this year extended out over
in the all-time 11
period,
Yeah,
like,
maybe.
sorry, I mean, is Irwin all time or is Irwin Premier League? Because obviously, all time has Charlton, Best and Law in it.
True, yeah.
I mean,
if I squeeze other people in, well, he's certainly in the Premier League era. Like, he's arguably in the Premier League 11, isn't he, since 92?
I haven't come back and looked at the competition for it.
I don't know, like that left back position, he appears a lot. Ashley Cole is obviously someone who probably appears in plenty of them. Yeah, and again, there is that Irish perspective we probably do throw Irwin into a lot of these things, but I mean, he deserves it. You look at his career, he was with Leeds from 83 to 86, then he had the 4 years with Oldham before he went to Old Trafford, 12 years at Manchester United, and then he finished his career with 3 seasons at Wolves, so 2 to 04. Like, and excelled at Gaelic football and hurling as a kid. Like, played at Croke Park more than one occasion. I think he once marked Niall Quinn in a match.
Did he?
At Croke Park. It must have been a similar vintage. Yeah, I remember hearing that story before. I'll have to look that up. But he doesn't look 57, Dennis, even now. Like, he's a great nick. And of course, he was feeling a little bit downbeat at Pep Guardiola in the week that Manchester City have just had. And as he said, it's hard to compare those two eras. Like,
Quinn's 56.
Yeah, similar vintage. And even discussing Pep Guardiola and Alex Ferguson's legacy, he was keen to stress these are two very different managers and two very different eras, and he's probably right. It's probably a tired argument, and it's one that I've probably asked guests about, and yet it is tired. There probably is no point comparing the City team of now to the...
I mean, there's no point in anything, no shame. We're all going to die in a burning conflagration, so...
That's a fair point.
At the same time, there's a long show to fill every morning. Wow. So asking some stupid sports questions is actually a totally legitimate way to spend your time on this earth.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's fair.
Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. Definitely not wrong.
We'd all have to quit the next hour if we believed that wasn't true, though, to be fair.
He was also he discussed Derek Cantona and just what it was like to share a dressing room with him, and I heard someone else asking him off air then afterwards about, I swear Cantona's doing a one-man show in Dublin this year, or I think it's in the Liberty Hall, where he's singing and performing music. And
I'm so fascinated by this.
It's Dennis was unaware, and he said he's singing. Like, Dennis said he'd never heard him sing. I said to someone yesterday, I would pay probably upwards of £100 to go into a room of a few hundred people and watch Eric Cantona walk on stage, put his collar up, say the Seagulls line, and then just stand there for an hour and a half and milk the applause. I'd probably pay upwards of £100 because that's performance, isn't it? It's just to see his facial expressions. He's one of those fascinating sports people I would literally pay to just watch and do nothing.
Ladies and gentlemen, episode 44 of Football Fans Are Weird.
I was going to say, you kind of half sound like every City fan or every just general football fan on Twitter the last couple of days being like, Jack Grealish, what a lad. Or else the deranged Arsenal fans who were saying that Mikel Arteta is encouraging all the team to settle down and marry their partners so that they won't have a playboy lifestyle next year and they'll just concentrate on winning the Premier League. And these were tweets going around with 40, 50,000 likes, and I was like,
who comes up with this?
How strange can you get as a football fan?
So we've encouraged them to get married or have kids or both?
Just to settle down. Just settle down, because I think a couple of them got married. Obviously, it's the off season. It's probably the only time they actually have in a very, very packed calendar to do these sort of things. And all the fans are like, oh yeah, elite mentality. Arteta is next level thinking of this. And I was like, you're really clutching for straws. I thought Win the Dog was bad, but this definitely takes the biscuit.
This was a traditional trope in the 80s. Alex Ferguson would have been a big advocate of the players settling down and encouraging them to get married at 2021 so that then they can have a divorce at 30 or 32 whenever the football career ends. It's one of the reasons why footballers have that massive and sports people generally have that massive divorce rate. But it was a real thing. It was definitely because I think a lot of the, not Ferguson, but a lot of the managers would have been big drinkers themselves and realised that this is a bad thing, and one of the things that stops them is a marriage and kids and responsibility, and that was how the thing went. So, and
of course he had
Arteta obviously has decided I wasn't quite sure from the way the story was told if this was true that Arteta had said this.
There's absolutely no proof of it whatsoever. It's literally just that 3 or 4 of them got married in the last couple of weeks or got engaged, and fans just took this as, it wasn't even a news line, it was just fans being like, okay, yes, we're away.
It's like
this is why we're going to win the Premier League next year. And I was like, I think we need to do a little bit more.
Elite mentality. It's funny how and Alex Ferguson had the issue then with David Beckham and getting into a relationship and then married with the most famous pop star in the UK at the time.
That's the opposite of settling down, though.
But then ironically they have become the most solid celebrity couple possibly in the world. Poschenbecks.
Do you follow the news, Shane?
Well, I mean, they're still together, aren't they? They've rake kids.
Okay.
I don't follow their personal lifestyle. Like, I'm not into the salacious, juicy details. Maybe you are, Ger.
You've never heard of Rebecca Luce?
Of course, yes.
Okay,
But
let's move on quickly because this is a sports show. But anyway, OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Got the ultimate shaver, your money back. Neon Night Edition is available now. It's 8 o'clock this morning. If you want to get in touch, we'd love to hear from you. 087 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. Tommy Rooney is standing by with the power rankings. But first, it's time for the cash machine.
Off the balls cash machine.
Right, Joe Andrews was working in the sun on Tuesday afternoon when the cash machine call came his way, and he has become our 6th consecutive winner. So far in June, we've given away €146,000, and we're planning on giving much more away starting now. Taking part is easy. Every day we give you an amount, you take note of it, enter, and if it's you we call, tell us the amount and you win the cash. The summer cash machine has been reloaded. €30,284.57. €30,284.57. To enter, text OTB and just the letters OTB to 57557. If it's you that we call back after 3 o'clock on Wednesday, the 14th of June, answer your phone within 5 rings and tell us the prize amount and you will win the money. So text OTB to 57557, costs $2.50 plus your standard message rate to play. Got to be over 18. You're playing across the Go Loud network of stations. Full terms are on our website at offtheball.com. So make sure you can answer within 5 rings, tell us the prize amount and the cash is yours. The number again, €30,284.57. Text OTB to 57557. Back after these, Tommy Rooney.
Off the balls cash machine.
3, 2, 1, go.
Whether you're a Drive to Survive fan or Grand Prix expert, now you can stay up to date with the world of F1. The F1 Pod on Off the Ball with Chicago Town Pizza, the ultimate podcast for F1 fans. The F1 Pod will keep you on the edge of your seat. For the best insight and analysis, subscribe to the Off the Ball daily podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. The F1 Pod on Off the Ball with Chicago Town Pizza. Formula One? Yeah, we go to town on it.
Cork were my team to watch. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, they get to the quarterfinals, and then I can say punditry passed.
Yeah, punditry
Completely, mate.
I did forget you love Cork. Like, you have a love-hate relationship with them, but
it's just because Cork bet him in his under-21 campaign with Kerry. He's scared. Scared.
They didn't beat us. They absolutely hammered us.
Yeah.
That's a record defeat at under-21 level. They actually disbanded the 21 grade after that, I think.
Yeah, let's go. We'll move this to 20.
That's because I remember being on the field and the crowd. You need those rivalries. You can't just have one of them being shite for no reason.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
Right, it is 2 minutes past 8 this morning. In the ad break there, you would have heard a clip from the latest episode of the Football Pod where James told Tommy and Paddy about how he's hoping for a Cork quarter-final appearance. The Football Pod is in partnership with AIB, proud sponsors of the Hurling, Football and Camogie All-Ireland Championships. Check out the hashtag the toughest for more. Tommy Rooney, good morning to you.
Good morning, Ger.
So, easier or harder to put the power rankings together as more evidence comes to light?
Easier. Yeah, I think so. It's getting there, Ger. Yeah, it's getting there. And I think a lot of people seem to be, just from chatting to people over the last couple of weeks, they seem to be in the same boat and reading different pieces. Like, it feels like every team has flaws and has issues, and nearly by default, because of their consistency so far and how impressive they've been, Galway are a lot of people's number one. So I don't know.
Basically,
they're a bit quicker.
Everybody's copying your power rankings is what's going on.
Well, listen, they are the official Gaelic football power rankings, so I'm just fulfilling a duty here. I'm just covering for Owen Sheehan.
Yeah, okay. Well, let's get through this because I've some bones to pick with you and your Football Pod.
Okay.
co-conspirators. But let's get through the Tailteann Cup bracket. But it isn't actually the Tailteann Cup bracket, because some Tailteann Cup teams, probably believe they should be in the Sam Maguire, and that's certainly what we're getting from the power rankings. But let's go through these, Tommy.
Yeah, okay. Couple of changes at the back end. There's a couple of big wins last week. We've got our quarter-final lineup for the Tailteann Cup. You'll notice that Wexford and Carlow have moved significantly. Leitrim and Wicklow have moved back. So we've got London 33rd, Waterford 32nd, Tipperary 31st, New York 30th, Leitrim 29th, Wicklow, who got promoted, 28th. Wexford have moved up to 27th, Carlow 26th, Longford, who didn't make it through, 25th. Leisure in 24th place if you go to slide 3. Fermanagh, who got promoted, have slid back due to their championship performances to 23rd. Limerick are rooted at 22nd, but I do think that they've kind of steadied the ship under Mark Fitzgerald ever since Ray Dempsey departed, or was the players got rid of him, you could say, in March. Antrim, Andy McEntee's Antrim, as they're being come to known, are in 21st place. They're up 2. Offaly 20th. They're out now for the year. They're finished. Sligo have slid back 1 to 19th because the Royals, County Meath, Mighty Meath are up to 18th, just behind Down in 17th, who have slid back. They're facing Cavan this weekend, who are in 16th.
I think Sligo are hard done by not to be above everybody, because they've actually performed really well, I would argue, so far in Sam Maguire. But to go back to the points on the first page, right, so Wicklow are 28th and Wexford are 27th. At the end of the year, what are we going to say about these two teams, and who's had the correct me if I'm wrong here, but Wexford are still Division 4 next season, right?
Yeah, Wexford and Carlow are still Division 4, but I think Carlow have played 6 championship games this year. Do you know, you've just got to give credit where credit is due. These teams are using these new systems and they're developing their players. They're getting bang for their buck. They're getting championship matches, and they're pretty close games that they're winning. Like Wexford kicked 122 from play at the weekend to beat Offaly. Offaly, who bet Meath. Offaly, who performed so well in the Leinster semi-final. So I just think it's a good sign that these teams are, I suppose, improving after the league, and
my point here is
reflected in the power rankings.
These competitions are actually proving beneficial to teams who know how to use them or who are using them properly, and so this is the first year of it. But I'm really worried that the narrative is going to be like, oh, this is a failure, we're bored of these games, I can't learn anything from them, this is nonsense. And I'm like, I don't think that's true. This is the league section. So round robin is like a phrase that, Champions League, it's a league section. The whole point of this is to get the best teams arriving in the quarterfinals or in the knockout round, which is like if we'd called it wildcard weekend and branded it properly, as opposed to preliminary quarterfinals.
Yeah, exactly.
The boring shit that you have to wade through before you get to the good stuff, like preliminary. Who likes the preliminaries? Nobody likes the preliminaries. Everybody wants the main event. If they'd branded that properly, we'd be really excited about the fact that the knockout football is imminent and everybody will be arriving at that stage of the season fairly. Because if you remember, the cry wasn't that we just want to watch the best teams play each other. It was also that it was completely unfair that the Ulster teams had to wade through miles and miles and miles of muck and bullets and warfare to get to the point where then they would be picked off by teams who are completely fresh from having played challenge matches in Leinster and Munster in particular. And now it's even. And when we get to the quarterfinals, semi-finals and wildcard weekend, it's going to be great.
Ger, I totally agree with you. And I don't know whether this is the bone that you wanted to pick at the football pod, and maybe I do represent the two lads. I disagree with the lads. Whinging and complaining.
You were too gentle with them. You need to kill them.
Okay, I got accused this week of being too afraid of Paddy Anders to chair the football pod. So maybe you're right. Maybe I need to stand up to the wolf. Look at.
And the other thing I'd say is that
there's a little bit of fatigue.
Go on, but the fatigue.
But no, I think that's understandable, Ger, but I also think that the narrative is going to be at the end of this.
Exactly.
Who's fatigued by it?
These are league games. These are league matches. Every league game doesn't have to be amazing. This is a league. Whether it's supposed to be the championship, but it's actually a league. We like the way it's formed is you play a bunch of games against the same teams in your group. Everybody plays the same number of teams. That is the definition of a league, and then the best teams come out of that into the knockout section, and that's the bit where you go, okay, what's the quality of this competition like, and what have we seen, and what have we learned from it?
Well, I think my point I was going to make there is the issue is, and the narrative that I think is going to be at the end of this is, what was the point of April? What was the point of those 30 odd games in the provincials? Completely imbalanced. They got in the way. There was so much going on. We were trying to read into them, but what was the point of it all? I think that's what the narrative is going to be after this. And I think that's what the point of this bloody elongated, truncated championship has been. It's supposed to be a Trojan horse. Like, the GAA had a far superior format in Proposal B, but it was a touch too radical. So it was shot down and defeated. And this was greenlit and pushed through without much of a discussion and much of a debate. And it's probably going to last for a year or two. But hopefully, unless I'm completely wrong, and if I'm wrong, I might just give up on GA and go and follow another sport or something.
Jimmy Guinness wants back to straight knockout for the top 16.
This has to be the future, but we just need to move the provincials out of the way and reduce its importance. Now, I'll probably get shot for saying that, but like, that is clear as day what the issue is right here.
Well, you say what was the point of those provincial games, but like Derry fans this year will
here
be
we go with Ulster.
No, but hold on.
Geez.
Derry fans will be delighted to have won back-to-back Ulster titles. That means something.
Ulster says no. Treat the
Ulster.
Never.
Why can't you treat the provincials as a separate competition, which it is to the All Ireland competition?
I agree.
Just
I know. I'm only messing shit. No, totally, and I agree. And it should be a provincial. It should be a separate competition.
And offer like incredible prize money for team holidays.
Possibly, yeah.
Absolutely. Treat it like the FA Cup.
Yeah.
You know, stick it away earlier in the year.
Where the
make
seats.
it a massive thing. Warm up. Move the leagues on a little bit. Get the football in better weather. Like Andy McEnany was talking about it during the week. You've got such important games in January and February where you can barely kick the ball past the 45 because of the wind and the rain and the muck.
Yeah.
And there's more attendances. There was more people at Galway Mayo in January than there was at Mayo Loud on one of the most beautiful days of the year 2 weeks ago in McHale Park. And that just shows you that people are mad to go to football, but the format is a little bit all over the place, and we'll get there. I think we will get there. I'm willing to put up with it.
I do think that we have to understand a little bit about attendances. When the weather gets really good, the family are going to watch the match on their phones or listen to the game on the radio, because there's other stuff that needs to be done. And but if there's loads of games on,
there's also a geographical thing here. Like, you two lads are from Leinster, so it's no wonder you're giving out about the provincial championship. Like, the last time someone other than Dublin won it, Nixon was president probably. Like, you need to just calm the ham here. Like, some people enjoy the provinces. I personally enjoy them.
But we're not saying you can have it.
I don't want to take away the provinces. I just want to take away the archaic 150-year-old control that it has on the championship. Is completely ill-balanced. Ger said it plenty of times. We have 33 counties involved in the football. It's perfectly set up to be broken down.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I made fair. Like, Armagh this year came through the preliminary round, got to the Ulster final. They're going to go through the preliminary quarterfinals of the round robin stage. Like, Armagh have to play way more matches than Galway have to play. And sure, you're saying they won, they get to be rewarded, but it's because of the way that the who drew the geographical lines back in the day? It's because of the way that the provinces are broken up. Like, that's the reason. We're dictated by something that isn't fair.
The planters. Yeah, I do think I agree with you that the league position should dictate what the remainder of the championship. But then also, if you put the provincials too early and you take away the meaning behind them, there's a danger that
keep your meaning.
Well, there's a danger when it comes to the McKenna Cup. Do you want the Ulster Championship to become the McKenna Cup?
You love the McKenna Cup.
I do, actually,
as much as you love the Ulster Championship. You actually do. And it's amazing, it's fantastic, and you have that there's that unbelievable colour with it, but that'll never be lost. The Connacht Championship is really good as well on one side, it is and on the other side with Connacht, Leitrim, New York and London is really competitive. It's just that there's such a gap between those Division 3 and 4 teams and Division 1 teams.
I think the actual answer to all of this is a third tier, to be honest, and that would be
possibly,
all the games would be completely cutthroat, and then you could still have your preliminary quarter-final, and you could have the Division 3 champions in a preliminary wildcard weekend, your Division 2 champions in a preliminary wildcard weekend, and against the worst teams. Or instead of making the 12 teams go through, make it 10 teams go through, and again you've wildcard weekend where the bottom 4 are playing and the top 6 are through automatically to quarter-finals. So there's ways to make this, to tweak it so that people are I think that this wasn't designed to stop dead rubbers, really. This was designed to give everybody the same number of games, and then you just need to make sure that from that point forward we have the best teams in it.
I did go too easy on the lads this week on the football pod. I guess I wasn't ready to have that debate.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, we shouldn't. We're getting sucked into it here too. I think it's one of the. We'll just get your line back there, Tommy. Is having a bit of trouble with it.
Paddy Andrews is dealing with the Wi-Fi there.
Triggering it's typical Dubs. They're interrupting the message. Somebody's put his hand up and said, "Well, hang on a second. Somebody's giving out about us."
Yeah, there's like a bat symbol coming from Dublin.
It's just is it the left arm? Does it matter which arm you put up when you're holding the ball? And you're like, oh, we're killing the game for a minute or two here. But when they do it, it's cynical and brilliant. When Roscommon do it, it's like, oh, it's the death of the game. It's the bubonic plague, the colic plague.
Yeah.
What? But the Dubs have been doing this for years.
Mm-hmm. I couldn't believe the narrative after that game, by the way. The amount that's been discussed about that Roscommon Dublin game.
Oh, change the rules. Or maybe just push up on them. Do you know?
Yeah.
Just push up on them.
As a manager, you have to be reactive. Davy Burke didn't play like that against Sligo, and they kicked an outrageous number of scores from play. To beat Dublin or get a draw against Dublin as it was.
Ooh,
play them at their game.
We need to do a separate power rankings for the managers.
Oh yeah. Well, Davy Burke's up there, isn't he?
Yeah,
he's the Roberto De Zerbi of this whole thing.
Give us an L power rankings from if you're out there watching us at the moment, youtube.com/off the ball. You can leave a comment there. You can tweet us at Off the Ball AM. Give us a power ranking of the managers. We'll stick the graphics up here and we'll come back. We'll get Tommy back up as soon as we can. So slide 3, Cavan are 16th, up 1. Westmeath are 15th. Kildare are 14th. Louth are 13th. Clare are 12th, down 1. Cork have gone ahead of them. They're in 11th. Donegal, clinging on in there, in fairness to them, are 10th. Monaghan are 9th. And then we get to the first page. Armagh down 1 to 8th. Tyrone up 1 to 7th. Several people have talked about Tyrone being potential All-Ireland contenders in this.
Andy McEntee did, didn't he?
He did, yeah. Roscommon are 6th. Derry 5th. Dublin 4th. Mayo 3rd. Kerry 2nd. Galway 1st. Tommy, you're back.
Sorry, lads. Yeah, I think the provincial council's cut my connection there. So, I don't know if you got my point there, but I just think I'm a little bit. I just think I parked it mentally, the structures, and I think we're going to go with it. So, I heard you go through the rankings there. A couple of movements. Cork jumped Clare. I think that's well deserved. Tyrone jumped Armagh. Rory Larmer making the point to me this week that Monaghan should be ahead of Armagh, given the state of their Armagh's championship so far, but I just think Armagh pushed Derry so far and they switched it on that day that they deserve to be in the top 8.
Well, Monaghan are coming. Beat Donegal this weekend and they'll move up.
It feels like Armagh put everything into the Ulster Championship and are a little bit broken by the experience.
Possibly. Yeah, possibly, Ger.
But then the performances...
they came so close. Like, there's definitely a hangover. Like, again, another penalty shootout, similar to last year against Galway. They came so close that there is a bit of a kind of hangover from that, you know. A question
listening to the football pod yesterday struck me when there's certainty that Galway will beat Armagh, right? Is it Galway Armagh this weekend?
It is Galway Armagh this weekend,
there's consensus, but
well, Paddy seemed pretty certain, but I did wonder, like, what happens in the alternative universe where the penalty shootout goes Armagh's direction? Are Armagh top of the power rankings this year? Is there like was that sliding doors moment so severe in the All-Ireland semi-final last year? I'm talking about not the Derry one, but if that the impact is a full page on the power rankings, you go from 1st to 8th. Like, are Galway free now because they reached an All-Ireland final and they're fulfilling their potential and they feel better about themselves because, you know, everything that they thought was possible became possible last year? Whereas with Armagh, it's like, oh, we're slightly cursed somewhat. What's
it's an interesting point, and I'm looking here for my first power rankings of the year, but if I'm not mistaken, I think I had Armagh in 5th at the start of the year, and I had Galway maybe in 3rd or 4th. Yeah, they were definitely high enough, Shane. So like what does that tell you? I suppose it tells you that it was massive last year, but the big thing this year has been the manner in which Galway have developed their squad, the manner in which they brought back all-stars and Ian Burke, you could say, or Peter Cook, who's made such an impact at inter-county level, or John Maher, who's come in from the cold to be one of the most impressive midfielders in the country, or the young defenders that they brought in to cover for Silk and Malloy. And while Armagh have Turbot has established himself. It's by and large still a similar team to what we saw last year. Actually, they've tried to add a bit more steel. They've kind of gone a different way about it. They've tried to kind of reduce the explosiveness and the madness and the chaos that they brought last year, because they know they can switch that on. And I think they tried to add a bit more steel and consistency this year, because that looked like from afar one of their biggest issues last year. So
okay,
I think the year started with Galway third and Armagh fourth. I gave them both a lot of kudos for what we saw last year. Armagh possibly too much, but Armagh have slipped back to 8th and Galway moved into first by virtue of what we've seen throughout the year. If Armagh had beaten Derry in the Ulster final, they'd be 5th right now.
Yeah, but that's the thing. A lot of teams put so much emphasis on so Armagh had to win an Ulster title under McGeeney. They haven't won an Ulster title since 2008, so they put so much emphasis on that. Derry, the pressure was off a little bit because they'd won last year, and their focus will be on the All-Ireland Championship this year. But I think Armagh losing that Ulster final in the manner in which they did has impacted them mentally since, because they haven't won it in such a long. It's same as Clare in the hurling. 98 is the gap. All of a sudden there's a mental thing that comes in every single year for some teams that so badly want to win their province, and Armagh are one of them.
There's obviously a savage level of disappointment there, and it was natural. There was going to be Armagh started plenty of their games quite well, but there's just something slightly, I don't know whether it's a confidence thing or just couple of sliding doors moments not going their way. Momentum is a really, really funny thing in sport, whether it be in the middle of a game or the middle of a season. Sometimes all you need is something to click and you can take off from there. We're all looking at Kerry, and I don't know whether we're seeing signs of 09 where they kind of stuttered their way through qualifiers and got by, and next thing, bang, the Dubs in Croke Park in the quarter-final, and they explode and they play some of the best football that we've seen Kerry play across that generation in those last couple of games, so across that decade. So momentum is so funny, and especially in a year like this, it could happen for Armagh. I don't know.
Yeah, I look, that is the one thing that is just giving me pause for thought, is that a team can suddenly find form, find a shape. Stuff that they've been working all year finally drops because they've had the extra 3 or 4 weeks and it's been honed in match conditions. So there's two sides to what happens over the next couple of weeks. If you end up in the wildcard weekend, you have to win that. So you're playing this week, you play wildcard weekend next week, and then you're playing All-Ireland quarter-final the week after, and then you have a week off before semi-final and a week off before the final. But over that 3-week block where you're playing game, we've seen Mayo in the past with their style of play come alive when they had to play qualifier, draw, replay to get to the 13-game season they had, which would basically be what Armagh would have to do this year if they make it. I don't think that Armagh had the same quality of football that Mayo team did, and they hadn't quite had the same level of experience that Mayo team did. But
put it this way: if Armagh finished third in their group, right, they're likely in the preliminary quarter-final to play away to, as things currently stand, Kerry, Monaghan, or Roscommon. Do you fancy them in any of those games away from home? I don't know. That's where Armagh are at the moment.
Well, it's not where they're at yet. And okay, it's a good point, Shane. They could end up playing those teams, and I know I have Galway in first place this weekend, and I know they've been ruled out, and I know they don't have Rian O'Neill yet, but there's still a lot to be decided at the weekend, and the lads are very dismissive on the pod this week. They picked the favourites for all the games. If you back all the teams the lads backed and you put a $5 on it, you'll only get 20 back, and that's from 8 games this weekend. So the favourites are being touted and predicted. But if we do see a shock this weekend, and if it goes slightly the other way and Armagh get a slice of luck, or the door opens on the right side, Armagh could finish top of this group by virtue of score difference, and then the championship is blown open once more. Same thing can happen with Roscommon and Dublin this weekend. If Roscommon manage to beat Kildare and Kildare roll over by more than Sligo roll over for Dublin, well then we're going to have the Dubs in second place, we're going to have Kerry in second place, we're going to have Galway in second place, and then we're thinking, this is a bit wild this weekend.
Can I just briefly talk about 09, which is the one that everybody talks about? Kerry, that's that. If Sheehan was here instead of wherever he is, he'd be like, that's the one that crowns them the winners of the team of the decade. They beat Dublin, who, let's face it, were shite, right? In 09, the Gilroy Revolution hadn't kicked in properly. They still had the rest of the Chaos Years team. There was a lot of lads with collars up and white boots, and then in the semi-final they beat Meath, and in the final they beat Cork. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
What? That's like
handy.
And they were poor against Meath. Yeah, I think maybe I misspoke earlier. Maybe it was 08 where they played the best football of their best football of that decade.
Yeah.
But
look, they were a great team, full of great lads. I greatly admire them, but Toronto the team of the decade, we all know it. Anyway, that's
definitely, Ger. I agree. And we're on the same boat with that. We've been there over the last couple of years. But yeah, 100%.
Okay, so the Dubs can't get no love. What are they, fourth?
Like,
Colin Nally in studio yesterday was like, who's going to win? It's like, Dublin.
But they call him as browbeaten by Dublin over the last couple of years. He's come so close. Like, Colin and Andy McEntee's Mead, who you've both spoken in the last week, they had 1.5 good halves of football against the Dubs in Championship. They were getting somewhere. At times, they had that Leinster final where they kept the Dubs to 4 points at half time and they only kicked 4 themselves. Like, they're scared, and I don't blame them for thinking that the Dubs are going to come and beat them. I haven't seen it yet, and I have to go off what I've seen. Kildare were very poor the last day. Kildare, the mind boggles why they didn't just do what they had done in Croke Park. It's like twice already this year Kildare had pushed the Dubs to a point, and they just didn't execute what they had previously done. I don't even think Dublin had to be that much better. Like, Bugler's having a great year. Collie Pascal stood up the last day. A bit more freshness in the forwards. But like, the injuries are building up, Ger. I'm not seeing where to put them yet.
They're still creeping their way, so if they presumably they'll beat Sligo by a bigger margin than Roscommon beat Kildare by this weekend, you'd imagine, on paper anyway, so that puts Dublin straight into a quarter-final, and all of a sudden they're there. Like,
I think so.
It's
much,
a big caveat.
Yeah, I think so much depends on whether or not McCaffrey is fit and reaches a full level of fitness, because it's ridiculous to say that a team is dependent on one individual, but at this level the difference between Dublin with him and without him is enough for them to, you've got to completely change your game plan. Basically, at 5 or 6 times during the game, a score is going to come off him, or he's going to get a score, and that's the difference between 116 and 112 or 111, and those 5 points, that's the margin of victory. Somewhere in that is the difference between losing a game against Kerry, Galway, Tyrone, Mayo, and winning a game against those. And that's how good he is if he's fit.
But I think this is the year, and it's quite obvious looking at the movement of the power rankings this year. There are no great teams, but this is a year where a great player might win an All-Ireland for their county. But it's also the year where one key injury can completely throw off a team. And you're looking at Galway. They lose one of their star players, maybe that completely imbalances them. If Kerry lose somebody, we're not even going to say his name, like, nobody else is really firing the way they are. If the Dubs lose 1 or 2 key players, if McGuigan isn't there for Derry, very quickly a hole or 2 in a team is going to really trouble them this championship.
With that in mind, right, there is also an opportunity for, it feels a little bit like Tyrone kind of washed up out of nowhere with that incredible subs bench, and it was a weird constellation of new management team, everybody available for 1 season and 1 season only, and they came out of nowhere, smash and grabbed, won the All-Ireland and disappeared. Were out of the competition at one stage because of COVID, and then managed to get their way back in. Like, when you think about it, it's absolute banana stuff. But this could be a year for a bananas winner. Like, and
absolutely.
If I'm Davy Burke, I'm like, why not us?
It feels like 2010, Ger, and I've said it since the start of the year. It feels like that there's a couple of teams in the brink, a couple of counties that could break through. There could be a Donegal or a Mayo, in the periphery here that aren't quite ready yet, but we're going to see them over the next couple of years take over. There could be another Dublin on the way, but they're just not ready to go yet. Or it could be a year where a Down or a Cork get to an All-Ireland final, like we saw at the end of the decade, and we never see them again for the next decade after that. So maybe we're going to see a Roscommon Derry All-Ireland final. Roscommon Armagh All-Ireland final, or Monaghan Roscommon, Shane.
I was going to say that credit needs to go to managers who come in and in their first year, Kevin McStay and Mayo, Davy Burke and Roscommon, Vinny Corey and Monaghan, like 3 counties that, with all due respect, fancy their chances of getting to an All-Ireland final.
Did you say David Burke and Monaghan as well? Was there
David Burke and Roscommon, of course, but like,
maybe I just heard it.
But first year managers, straight away coming in and adopting their game plan.
Well, sorry, Tommy, when the line was down, we were saying you should do a power rankings of the managers, and like they'd all be going great guns at the moment.
That'd be tough, Ger. I'd have to do a power rankings of the management teams, I think, because of the importance of who's around who. I think that's very, very important.
You must be very well connected to some of these management teams, because I haven't yet brought up a manager when you have I think you're in some coaching WhatsApp groups. Colin Nally revealed to us yesterday that the coaches all share information, and I suspect that you've been co-opted into some of them.
Yeah, well, look, there's a coaches WhatsApp group, there's an analyst WhatsApp group, there is a manager's WhatsApp group. They all exist. I haven't infiltrated any of them, but I just think we've learned over the last couple of years how important it is who you have around you, who you have doing what. The manager of an inter-county team is such a big job that you need to have the right people around you, and we're seeing that. Who
was the best team? Like, you're thinking Cian O'Neill in Galway, or you're thinking the Mayo All-Star backroom team, or Mark McHugh in Roscommon?
Like, Cian O'Neill and Joyce seem to be the perfect marriage. McStay seems to have nailed about what he has, and the on-field coaches in Buckley and Rochford, and what Mulligan and McHale are bringing to the table. Like, last year it felt like Jack O'Connor and Paddy Talley were the perfect balance, you know? Like, Dublin's water carriers this year are Pat Gilroy and Brian Cullen. That just shows you the strength of what they have. Like, they've been delisted from the match programme so that they can carry water. So, like, you know, it's unbelievable. Like,
that shenanigans is one of my favourite wrinkles in GAA history. It's like, oh, you can't have those as their Mayor Furness. Grand, well, they won't be officially selected then. That's grand. We see what you're doing, and we've managed our way around it. It's like,
I give you my power rankings. They're of the management teams to be just the way they are right now.
Same with the teams.
Nah, I'm only joking. To be a bit more movement. Maybe we'll have a look at that. Yeah, maybe we'll have a look at that. Okay.
That can be one of our down weeks. Okay, so Galway 1, Kerry 2. Are Kerry a little bit high?
Like, I don't know what you want me to do here, because
I want the Dubs higher.
I'm saying there's chinks in the armour, but you get credit for winning All Ireland, and like, they've been shook a little bit. I thought they were pretty good against Cork in the first half. Some people disagree. They still have David Clifford, and David Clifford could win the All Ireland on his own. Yeah. Like, he's not even fully fit. He's not even great yet. He's just playing with that bit of anger. I'm not sure if you read Eamon Fitzmaurice's piece in the Examiner, a little excerpt a couple of weeks ago, but he said, like, involved with Fussa, what he saw was Clifford is so good at it, and he's happy to facilitate others and let others do the business if things are going well. But the second the team gets in a bit of bother, he becomes the main man. Give me that ball, he'll do the damage, he'll look after it. So that's not going to get Kerry all the way this year. They're going to need others to just up it a little bit. I think Mayo, if Mayo don't have that 1-1 collapse in injury time against Louth, we're looking at it going, they won by 14 points to 9, job done. Sure, they kind of struggled a little bit with the blanket, but they butchered a couple of goal chances, and I don't think it was that bad for Mayo. They're staying in third, and like the Dubs in fourth. I just think that's the order at the minute. And
well, Ger's after saying there, Tommy, I want Dublin higher, and if memory serves me correctly, in the last power rankings we had, Ger was backing down off Dublin and saying,
just saying they were 1A, they were 1 on 1A.
Okay, right. Well,
I wasn't giving Galway enough credit early in the year. I've changed my mind a little bit on Galway. They're winning me over.
It's fickle, isn't it, Tommy?
But that's it, Shane. It's easy to sit there and have your pops and your little jabs, and I'm the one who has to be up till 2 a.m. of a Monday doing my power rankings and making sure I move it, making sure that Pat Spillane and myself nearly have the exact same power rankings. So I don't know what that says.
You must be very proud.
Well, look at Pat is obviously.
You say there's plagiarism here, Tommy. Come on, just say it. I'll say it if you won't say it.
No, there's no plagiarism, and I'm not Jesus, I'm not saying that. But I just think it is the way that the year has gone. I think that it's hard not to put Galway in first place by default, and that's what I'm saying, because they haven't won the All Ireland yet. There's still a long way to go, but they have been the most consistent and impressive team. Everyone else has obvious chinks in the armour.
A few quick comments. Could have dropped Fermanagh 3 places to put Laois ahead of them after last weekend, says the unofficial Kildare fan page. Quirky 1980 says Meath are lucky with their group. Ronan Hurricane, good morning Ronan, says unfortunately Ger, it's still not fair. Ulster teams find it harder to get to the provincial final and therefore find it harder to get into Sam Maguire. It's still not the best 16 teams competing for Sam. I can see how Cavan would be pissed off.
I also think, Offaly in 20th and Wexford back in 27th after Wexford beating them by 5 points. There's an argument there the Wexford fans are a bit upset. I know you're saying league form comes into it and everything, but you have to be reactive here. Wexford are flying.
Yeah, okay. Wexford, Offaly. Wexford have moved up 2, and I just think that's reflective of where Wexford are in the country. And like, Offaly knocked out Meath out of Leinster and performed so well in Croke Park. So look, maybe I'm giving Offaly a bit too much credit. Fermanagh moved back 2. They're not getting over Laois. Like, Laois have had an horrendous year. Yes, they've pulled it out of the bag. But like the week before that, 2 weeks before that, Laois threw away a 6-point lead and drew. The week before that, they pulled it out of the fire against London and got a late point. They have responded really well to adversity in the last couple of weeks. A fantastic win in Brewster Park, but I couldn't put Laois any higher than 24th. They're doing well to be that high, Shane, I think.
Is it your ambition and dream that we have an Antrim Meath Tailteann Cup final?
Oh, that would be tasty. That would be tasty.
You're not backing down from Down, are you, Tommy? Like, I still think the winner of the Cavan Down match wins the Tailteann Cup, and I think it's going to be Down.
I think the winner of the Tailteann Cup is coming from there as well, Shane, and very hard to call. Like, really hard to call. Like, Down, they've had a really interesting couple of weeks. They were brutal against Meath. Like, that's why Meath are behind them. Down kicked 17 wides that day, and I think they just got the better of Meath. Or Meath just got the better of them, which is great for Meath. But, like, you know, there's been an interesting wrinkle this week with Down sending their players back to their club football who weren't going to start their game against Longford. I think they made a good few changes for that game. They weren't great. They were in trouble at half time. They'd missed the penalty. Really good response in the second half to win by 8 points. I think Down are in a good place. Down football is in a good place. I just wonder, it's going to be a cracker of a match. I just wonder who's going to come out of that game with Down and Cavan. Cavan are obviously going to be favourites. I haven't given Cavan much credit this year. I think Cavan might just... it's hard to call. I don't know. I can't call that one, Jim. Are you calling Down to win that one?
I'm calling Down to win that one. I know it's in Breffni Park, but I think that's the only...
to win the Tailteann Cup.
I think it's the only away win of the 4 Tailteann quarterfinals. So Limerick will beat Laois at home. I think Meath will beat Wexford at home, and Antrim will beat Carlow at home. But I do think Down can cause that little minor, I wouldn't say upset, but away victory this weekend.
All right, Pat Spillane Jr. is on the show on Friday morning, by the way, so make sure you tune in for that. We'll ask him about his dad's power rankings versus yours, and he can power rank the power rankings for us.
You can ask him how he does it. How does he scientifically do it, you know?
All right, because we've never got the full science. I mean, maybe
staying up till 2 a.m.
Maybe Owen pass it on to you.
No, me and Owen have slightly different methodologies, but he showed me, you know, what he does. So, and look, I can't reveal that.
It's the bottom of was it Death Road? Was that where he had his cycling accident in Bolivia?
Yeah, I actually can't wait for the 3-hour special with Owen when he comes back and he talks us through his trip. I think it was Death Road, but I think the best part of it was that his instructor, the tour guide that was with them, had kind of stopped at the point that he was at on the cycle, so they'd done this crazy cycle, and they said, "Okay, guys, like, well done, you've come through the toughest part. Now this is the bit where everybody falls because they think they've come through it." And Owen takes off with no fear, and very lucky. Thank God he's all right.
All right, episode 11 of Tommy Rooney's edition of the GA Power Rankings is in the books.
Tommy knows his football, obviously listen to football pod the odd time. And I was looking at the power rankings and I thought that Jesus, Owen must still be feeling the effects of these mushrooms.
Okay, it's 8:36 this morning. Very quickly, some paper reviews for you. Mbappe and PSG in bitter transfer row. Moeen Ali thought his test recall was a joke for the Ashes. The Ashes, you're going to have a lot of the newspapers covering that at the moment. Mbappe plots escape route out of PSG. It's a James McLean picture on the verge of his 100th cap, an incredible achievement for him. Troy Parrott aiming to revive his Spurs career under Ange Postecoglou. And John Round, the PJ players feel betrayed. The Mail up against it. Ireland cannot afford to lose in Athens. That's Denis Irwin. Clarence Hogan refuses to blame the referee for final loss. That's their cornerback Adam Hogan. Rory steers away from media duties at the US Open, so no more press conference from Rory this week. Water under the bridge. Mannion and Galway look to move on from Leinster final heartache, and they also have the news that Brendan Rodgers is on the brink of a stunning Celtic return. It did seem very unlikely, but now he's back. And then get real, get Real. Madrid on red alert as Mbappe contract standoff could force PSG to cash in. That's the back of the Daily Star. And then a story we haven't talked about at all. Larry's TV snub, GA President Larry McCarthy, walked out of a television interview at the launch of the hurling championship in Waterford yesterday when he was asked about the association subscription channel GA Go. I'll come back to that in a few minutes, but at 8:38, time for Virtual Insanity.
You have entered Power Drive.
Oh, wow! John Duggan, good morning to you.
Ger and Shane, how are we doing?
The US Open is here.
Yeah. Los Angeles, Hollywood, Beverly Hills starts tomorrow. Rory McIlroy, Shane Lowry, Padraig Harrington, Seamus Power and Matt McLean in the field. All dominated by the talk about the game and what's going to happen, but the brutality of the US Open and the balls disappearing into the rough and being 25 over par will now hit the players like a steam train.
Hard but playable, says Shane Lowry.
Yeah. Par 70 in Los Angeles Country Club has not been a major venue at all. It hosted a few LA Opens back in the 30s, but has not, and a Walker Cup, but has not been used for majors. So there's a lot of some players have played it because they would have played California golf, but not a lot of players have much experience with the course. But with all these things, US Opens, play well, hit the fairway, hit the green, scramble well, putt well. It's not that difficult. You just have to have patience. It's going to be a long week. It's going to be a long week for any of us watching late at night in California, but it's going to be great. And I think we obviously see now with the live break that the majors are assuming more importance. And because we got all the best players there, and Brooks, who defected from the PGA Tour, won the last one, the US PGA. So many plot lines from a golfing perspective, and so much depth. I think it's very hard to narrow it down. That's what we're going to try and do. When you're looking at this, and I've not on my best of runs actually recently, so that's why I've been kind of quiet on the virtual insanities, because if I don't feel like I'm feeling it, I don't come in and I do it. And if I feel I can get a bit of form again, I'll do it again. If that's so, I really do think it's important to just sometimes lay down the arms, as it were, and not have a go. Whereas the last couple of years were very much profitable, and we were on a roll and doing it every single week. So that's my kind of thinking around that. But obviously, we'll always do the majors. When you think about it, if Rory McIlroy's 11-1 to win and he's the headline pick, it's like it really dulls your interest that he's probably not going to win on the basis of stats over the last 9 years. But if you're looking at 9-4 to be placed and making a profit on this, in the last 3 tournaments he's been in the top 10. In the last 4 US Opens he's finished in the top 10. So if you're making a bet each way on Rory McIlroy, only in more, I'm going to give a few others as I would anyway, in a field of over 150. But if you're only going to back Rory McIlroy at 11-1, you're more likely than not to make a profit on him, whether he wins or doesn't win. And he's more than likely not to win.
Yeah. So maybe so you're not putting him up as a headline, or you think he's going to win, but you do think that there's a good chance he places.
Yeah, but the bonus is that I'm going to headline him because I think he can't not headline Rory McIlroy in a way. If that makes sense.
Does it help that he's not talking?
Well, maybe being the sacrificial lamb will motivate him. Like, he's got ample motivation now to win. He's done everything in the game but win a major over the last night. Like, he won both tours last year. How difficult is that to do, you know? He played with Brooks first 2 rounds. That'll be fun. Just spoken to Sky yesterday in a good form. Look, he's well capable of winning this. He's won it before. So that's why I'm kind of thinking from a few different angles why he might be the pick this week.
The US Open has traditionally had a bunch of winners who come from nowhere to win. Like if you go all the way back, you're seeing Jeff Ogilvy, Angel Cabrera. So Cabrera obviously was another major winner, but Lucas Glover, G-Mac, Webb Simpson,
Scott Simpson,
Martin Keimer, Gary Woodland.
Gary Woodland was a bit of a left fielder at Pebble Beach, and I've got a few of them here, right?
Matt Fitzpatrick.
No, he was painful. That was painful last year. It was painful. I don't even want to talk about that.
What made it painful for you, John?
Because he was in my ballpark in my mind to have a cut at him, and he didn't play that well in Canada, and I went off him, and that was black bag stuff. It was black bin sacks. It could have been if Fitzpatrick had won.
Is Nick Taylor in with if you're looking at Canada? Into the shout?
I think everybody's in with a shout that's playing well. The other ones I'm going to go for, I'm looking for golfers with California experience, right? And people like slag me off every single time for like putting a Patrick Cantlay in these events. He's 16-1 for 9 each way. But he's played the course dozens of times. He went to college in Los Angeles. He's now got Tiger's ex-caddy in the bag, Joe LaCava. That's obviously going to help him. He's 4th ranked in the world. Why? Top 15s in his last 3 majors, so he's now beginning to get a major comfortable. Tied 9th at the US PGA in his penultimate start. Top 15s in the last 2 US Opens. Leads total driving in the stats on the tours. He's driving the ball very well this season. He says he knows exactly where he wants to hit the ball this week, and he looked confident in his press conference. Sometimes he can be looking quite gloomy, and I just think the California experience makes him, he's skinny odds, but I do think he's going to be thereabouts. Patrick Cantlay 16s. Ricky Fowler, I'm going for three guys who I think are definitely going to contend, and then going to give you three outsiders. The third one to contend is Ricky at 45-1. So Ricky was outside the top 100 in the world at the end of last year, beginning of this year. Now he's 45th in the world. Why? Because he's working with Butch Harmon again, the best coach in the history of the game. Ricky seems to have copped on to the fact that, you know, you got to get your head down and go and do this. In the last two tournaments, he's been in the top 10. He's playing well. 6 top 10s and 17 PGA Tour events this season. 8th in strokes gained approach in the PGA Tour. That's going to be important at this course. A little bit of room off the tee this week. A Linksy style feel, firm and fast. That suits Ricky Fowler's game. If he can get over the fact that he probably turned down $75 million to join LIV, and not take the money and be okay this week with that and go and win the US Open, then you might win it. Ricky Fowler, who's definitely well capable, has been second in this tournament in the past and has had top fives in all 4 majors. The orange man, Ricky Fowler, he's only 34. He can definitely do this. And he's also grew up in California. So the three outsiders, Sahith Theegala, you might know him from the Masters. When as a rookie, he finished 9th. He's 90-1 for 4 each way. He was the king of college golf in California. He's got a lot of, once again, reps at this course. He's an artist. He's a completely Maverick-style player, brilliant putter, not the best off the tee, but once again, if he can just get into rhythm in terms of his approach and his short game, he is just such a natural talent. Sahith Theegala, second in birdies on the tour this year, would say that to you. Hard to earn a maiden victory, but Matt Fitzpatrick, as we talked about there, it was his first win in America when he won in Boston last year, so that's why I'm going to go with the artist, Sahith Theegala. I'm going to go for the opposite end of the spectrum with Keith Mitchell at 175-1 for 3 each way. This guy, all he does is keep the ball in the fairway, and that's a really good start in the US Open. He's been consistently one of the top drivers on the tour, played well on the West Coast swing, played well in Los Angeles, 5th at Riviera earlier this year, tied 4th at Pebble Beach, has not been in the best of form, but going back to the California coast could inspire the guy who wears the cashmere sweaters. And finally, Patrick Rogers, once again, was one of the top California guys as an amateur, had a comparable record to Tiger Woods at Stanford. He's 250-1 for 2 each way. Nearly lost his card recently, but he's 46th in the FedEx Cup, so he's going to retain his privileges. Just needs to put it together for 4 rounds. He was in the top 10 at halfway in this tournament last year. He was only 2 shots off the lead of the Memorial Tournament a couple of weeks ago, faded in the final round. Is a very talented guy, just needs to get a bit more comfortable, but that's why he's 250-1, and he's 50-1 to place in the top 8. So Patrick Rogers, Keith Mitchell, complete outsiders. Sahith Theegala, a mid-range outsider. Ricky Fowler is somebody who can win this. Patrick Cantlay is definitely somebody who can win this. And wouldn't it be great for Rory to put the 2 fingers up to the world and to ring Greg Norman after he's won the US Open and say, mate, I've got 5 majors.
Yeah, that would be incredible. Like, if it's ever going to happen, do you feel like this is...
Does it feel, you know, if there is a storyline, because, you know, sometimes in sports storylines are written, like last year there's a great storyline and Matt Fitzpatrick won the US Amateur at Brookline, and there's a photo of him and his parents and his brother, I think it was 10 years apart. They did the same photo. This has got, this would be Hollywood, I know, and it's in Hollywood, if Rory did win this week. And it would be a welcome development for golf.
2 fingers up to the new deal.
Well, just to this, like when you think about it, this guy is. Look, Brooks has got more majors now, but Rory McIlroy is the face of golf and he's the voice of golf. Am I right in saying that?
Oh yeah.
It certainly seems to be. It certainly that's not like an Irish-centric lens. They needed and they wanted him to come out and defend the PGA Tour. He did his job. He did what he thought was right, and he's getting punished for it on loads of different levels. So,
well, you saw Michael Block was told, you know, live during an interview that he was going to be playing a round with Rory McIlroy at that recent tournament, and he was just like, he couldn't speak. He was like, "This Rory McIlroy."
There is he brings the colour that is not there, and maybe this is unfair, but on the surface level, when you see Rahm, Scheffler, Brooks Koepka, you know, Seve had a bit about him. Woods had something about him, even if he was quite surly, because he was such a genius. Mickelson had something about him. Trevino, Watson, you know, they all had a certain type of uniqueness, and I think that's kind of gone out of the game a bit. Too many automatons, too many robots, and Rory has the pure candour, and to me he's the face of the game, and I really hope he deserves a major win, and 9 years is too long, and hopefully, given the Masters is now out of the way and all this stuff is out of the way, maybe he can just have a degree of freedom this week, because what has he got to lose?
Alright, that's this week's episode.
Alright folks.
You have entered Power Drive.
Oh yeah, John. There is other golf news. Jay Monahan has taken ill and is no longer in day-to-day control of the PGA Tour.
Yeah, this is overnight stuff, and once again, the timing of this is unbelievable. That he had an unspecified medical condition, and he's now given the duties have been given over to two of his lieutenants on the tour to run the day-to-day operations. A couple of corporate executives from the PGA Tour. But as I said, with John Ram coming out yesterday and saying that they felt betrayed, the players, Patrick Cantlay I was reading his transcript, said that they were completely shocked for this now to happen, and you hope the man is okay. It's just the timing of it. It is unbelievable. Monahan said before this statement came out that he felt that they were left on their own by the US state in terms of support for the PGA Tour. But the PGA Tour is it's a non-profit. It's tax exempt. So there's a vacuum there that has to be filled. Like, nobody knows what's going on. Like, Larry's talking about it. Scheffler's talking about it in the press conference. Nobody knows what's happening here, and it's a vacuum that needs to be filled quickly because. I suppose the interesting thing about the US Open is it is a completely separately run event by a separate organisation. But for the PGA Tour to have with all these things, I think in every sport and organisation, and you talked about the Larry McCarthy thing there, and I did speak to Larry McCarthy 3 weeks ago, and he gave me an answer about Jago and that kind of thing. But you do need to have that public presence to say, this is what the situation is. This is what, we're going to give you more information next week or whatever, but just even hold something and to have some kind of certainty for people, because you're talking about a huge sport and a worldwide sport and a lot of things riding on it.
It does seem strange that there aren't more public faces who can come out and just calm the waters, address the sponsors, the fans, the players, the TV companies, and go, no, we've got a very clear plan. We know exactly what we're doing. Here's how we think it's going to grow the game. Here's how we're going to make sure that the best stars are playing more often against each other in the biggest tournaments. And here's what the global footprint is going to be. These are the projections. It does feel like they don't know any of that stuff just yet. It does feel like they were making this up as they go along, and that doesn't inspire confidence when it comes to, so John Ram is saying, echoing almost exactly what Rory said, but he was a less public face, no less supportive, you'd have to say, in that he didn't take the money. You
see more anger though in John Ram. You
do. He's an angry fella.
Yeah, it's barring brawling.
Yeah,
metaphorically, obviously.
Yeah.
As long as he can control that, he needs to control that aggression and process it in the right way. I'm sure he can. He seems to use it well. Some players get angry and
but as we'll get back to Rory again. Rory's the face, and he is the sunny face of and you need that. You need a Jack. You need that kind of thing going on.
I didn't realise you'd spoken to Larry McCarthy recently, and he gave you an answer about GAGO. This is a story today because he was at the launch of the hurling championship yesterday, which was on, I think it was on down in Waterford. Is that correct?
It was.
The De La Salle club in Waterford City.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know if I can play this through the microphone or anything. Can I? That's what he said to me a few weeks ago.
As we do with everything, we'll look back at it at the end of the season, and we're not going to make any mad changes in mid-season, for instance. We'll see what we can learn from it at the end of the year.
Can you understand maybe some of the frustrations?
I can understand some of the frustrations as well. Yeah, I can. But I mean, there's also we have a wonderful platform. We would be remiss to a certain extent if we didn't develop that and use it and put games that would not necessarily be televised by other entities out there and give people access to it. As we do with everything, we'll look back.
And I think that answer is buying time to the end of the season, which was basically what they had done since this first erupted. But yesterday he was speaking to Joe Caulfield of Virgin Media, and he just stopped the interview and didn't answer the question.
Well, Joe asked him, there's been controversy over the lack of free-to-air games and maybe the distribution of the broadcasting. That's all he got the chance to say. And Larry walks away.
Shaking of the head no, I'm not talking about it.
I was at the press conference in Croke Park for the Katie Taylor So it was the GA's financial report, but obviously that was the day of the Kitty Taylor controversy. We were deciding whether it was going to be Croker or Three Arena, and I put the question to Larry in the press conference, and he just shook his head, and like Tom Ryan, the Director General of the GA, picked it up and gave some sort of answer and calmed Larry down and said, no, it's okay, I can answer it. It's weak leadership from Larry McCarthy to walk away from an interview like that on a it's not the most difficult question to come up with some sort of answer for, and there are a number of incidents like this where the GA president has been asked a question that's not all that difficult, and by the way, not all that surprising to be asked it. Like Katie Taylor that day, you were going to be asked that, like that question from Joe yesterday, you're going to be asked that, so come up with an answer. It just shows weak leadership, in my opinion, to walk away from an interview live on camera.
Is there something in the Star though that says that was there maybe a request not to talk about it?
But but
I'm just
so you're right. So if
there was a request not to talk, I'm not like batting for the GA here,
of course.
Right? But if there's a request not to talk about it, and then you're asked about it, and then you're annoyed, and then But
then I suppose you should still have some stock answer for if you are asked about it, and then rather than walk away.
You have the stock answer, and then off the camera you go nuts.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
You say, why did you ask me that?
Keep the cool on camera. It just doesn't look good.
Well, you're going to get the inevitable pile-on, which is what happened now.
100%.
So here's what Carl O'Kane is reporting in the Star. The GA declined to comment last night, but Star Sport understands there was an agreement before the interview that McCarthy would only answer questions about the launch and the competition. So while the GA are declining to comment, they're saying off the record that's what their understanding was. That's the translation of what that means to you. So instead of actually coming out and saying that, they're saying we've nothing to say officially, but here's our line about what happened. And again, I just don't think, like, what's the point of that?
Doesn't mean the journalist can't ask the question and be refused, but walking away out of shot, I thought was the.
It felt a little bit like Larry had been told not to say anything, and that actually instead of the president being free to express the views of the organisation, that the administrative arm of the organisation is all powerful and is telling the elected president what he can and can't say. And so I wonder about the weakness of the leadership so much as, like, it clearly shows that the power is in the full-time staff within Croke Park, and I'm not really sure that is necessarily the strongest position for any organisation to be in all the time. Like,
if you're going to do a GA deal, you want to be getting out there in front of it and be unapologetic about why you're doing it. And then if Congress disagrees with it or whatever, if you're going to do it,
no different to the Live situation.
You got to explain it. You got to explain what you're about and say, look, no, I know it's controversial, but we believe that we're only allowed to put these many games in RT. There was no other bidder for the other rights. So therefore, we have to maximise revenue. We have to give money back to the clubs. We're a voluntary organisation. Where are we going to get our revenue from? We have to. Do you see these clubhouses around the country? That's why we're doing this. We know it's controversial. We're trying to improve the broadband. And then you go out and you explain it and say, this is what the situation is, folks. And we're going to take the brickbats on this. That's all you need to do. You go out there and you say, we know we're getting the heat on this, but you got to stick with us. We feel we're actually above the curve on this. That's all you need to say. The defensiveness then creates this.
Yeah, Larry's trying to avoid it becoming a story. But if he had just said roughly what you had just said there,
if he said exactly what he said to you 3 weeks ago,
yeah.
So he knows the lines. That's the thing. He knows the lines, but I don't know.
It was like there was a degree of a bit of a vacuum in the Waddy Graham's Kilmacud thing as well, where you're coming out there. I remember, was it a press conference? No. That's
what he didn't.
That's for the CCCCC to talk about. You're the guys. You're the leaders of the association, and I know you've all these committees, and I know it's a very democratic organisation, and it's kind of bottom up or whatever. But sometimes you need to. Pork Duffy was very good at it. Say no. This is our position on this. This is our position on this. This is our position on this. And sometimes there were difficult, even around the Sky thing, there were difficult conversations. But you always felt with that. You would get a straight answer, and people would then go, okay, that's fair enough.
Yeah, and look, I think was it Morris Brosnan was pointing out yesterday in the Examiner, it could have been somebody else, that the GA Go situation is going to become more pronounced as there's one last weekend, is a quarter-final weekend where there are 2 games exclusively on GA Go, so it depends on who is in those matches, and again it leads us all back to who's making those decisions. RTE have a foot in both camps, which we've said again and again looks and smells like a conflict of interest. And again, this isn't a story that's going to go anywhere. So what's happened by not answering the question in the way that they didn't answer the question yesterday is that we're all talking about it again today, and everybody's reminded, oh yeah, that was a story a while back. Then the games happened and everybody's like, oh, we've forgotten about that again. But so we shall see. OTB AM live with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shaver. Your money back. Neon Light edition is available now. Anything else, JD?
Depeche Mode playing tonight in Dublin. That's always a great thing.
Are you going?
Hopefully I might be able to snake it.
Pet Shop Boys are playing Malahide Castle today apparently as well. Someone told me this morning.
No, Depeche Mode are playing Malahide Castle today.
Oh, are Pet Shop Boys playing at all?
I don't know.
Yeah, next Monday night in the 3 Arena.
Okay, right. So it's Depeche Mode today.
So
well, nostalgia.
You haven't missed your Pet Shop Boys yet.
Not just yet. You're a big Depeche Mode man.
Yeah, they'd be one of my favourite bands worldwide. Obviously Andy Fletcher sadly passed away last year, and on a unrelated note, obviously your thoughts with Christy Digdam's family, very sad.
Yeah, big Bose man, wasn't he? He certainly would have gone to Bose matches over the years. I don't know if he was a Bose fan or what the story was there, but sad news.
Very sad, yeah. Icon of Dublin and Irish rock.
All right, one last clip for you now from Denis Irwin. Here he is talking about the Pep versus Fergie conundrum.
It's difficult to compare eras, of course, and look, it's difficult to compare managers, and I know you haven't been in a dressing room with Pep Guardiola as such as a player, but how would you compare, I guess, the future legacies of the likes of Pep Guardiola and Alex Ferguson as things stand?
Well, they've both been great managers. When you think of what Sir Alex did at Aberdeen before he come to Manchester United, and to do 27 years at Manchester United and build 4 or 5 different teams and win what he did. And then Guardiola's done a great job at Barcelona. He had an incredible team there to look at, to watch. And Bayern Munich, he did a great job. And City now, City are very, very strong. Obviously have grabbed the Premier League 5 times in the last 6. First Champions League, FA Cups, League Cups. They're a very strong team at the moment. So you got to say he's done a fantastic job as well. Both different in their styles. As you said, very hard to compare because different eras and all that. But yeah, 2 great managers who've achieved 2 great feats, I think, in trebles.
If there's at least one positive thing you can take from this week, I guess it reminds you of that night in Barcelona in '99, and maybe brings up certain memories of clinching the treble on the 26th of May. What was your view of that Solskjaer goal that night? Like, can you take yourself back there at the speed of thought, or is it one of those things you have to kind of almost think back to exactly how you felt in that moment?
No, I was lucky in the fact that I've been at the club. It was my 9th year at the club. I was 33. I was able to take it in a bit more than my first season at the club when we beat Barcelona in the Winners' Cup in Rotterdam, and that kind of just went over me because I was obviously very young. And
you did a Jack Grealish on it that time?
Yeah, I didn't quite do that, but it went over very, very. And if I did, nobody'd know because there was no phones anyway. But no, it went past so quick. So I tried to take as much in as possible. But what I do know is that we had a great desire to win matches and go right to the end. We were very resolute. We were hard to beat. We'd always keep going. Very much what the manager wanted, and in the end, it got us there. A little bit of luck in the final. I think, to be fair to say, he had a little bit of luck in the final as well. But that's the way it goes. You need that sometimes. But great memories from 24 years ago. It really was.
It's Denis Irwin reflecting on the differences between the trebles in advance of the game. It's Bilbao or
Bilbao, yeah. 6th of August.
Bit of controversy about the ticket prices for the World Cup warm-ups for the men's rugby team. Going to be cheaper to go and see Manchester United. Significantly cheaper, I think, like 40 quid cheaper for the most expensive ticket, is it?
Yeah, I think the United tickets are 35 quid for cheapest, 85 maybe for the good tickets, which is a lot, I suppose, for a pre-season match. But yeah, the World Cup warm-up matches are mad ticket prices as well. All of a sudden, watching sport, even in this country, is difficult financially, isn't it, for a lot of people?
Yeah. Season tickets are the best value. The FAI have good family season tickets that you can buy, tickets for families that go on sale for the groups. And I know everyone's like, I only want to go to the good games. Like, well, come on, go to the Gibraltar game and support the team. And the season tickets for the GAA is good value and has been good value over the years too. But if a one-off game, if you want to go and have good seats in any of the big stadiums, it ain't cheap.
No.
2 minutes past 9, time for the cash machine.
Off the balls, summer cash machine.
So Joe Andrews was working in the Sun on Tuesday afternoon when the cash machine call came his way, and he became our 6th consecutive winner. So far we've given away 146 grand in June. We're planning on giving away much more starting now. Every day we give you an amount, take note of it and enter, and if it's you, we call at 3 o'clock, you tell us the amount and you win the cash. The summer cash machine has been reloaded, the new total €30,284 and 57 cents. To enter, text OTB to 57557. The cost is $2.50 plus your standard message rate to play. Got to be over 18. You're playing across the Go Loud network of stations. Full terms are on our website at offtheball.com. You have to have your entry in by 3 o'clock on Wednesday the 14th of June. The cash machine is then randomly will pick one winner, and it could be you were calling. If it is, answer within 5 rings, tell us the prize amount, and the cash is yours. The number again, €30,284 and 57 cents. Text OTB to 57557. Back after these.
Off the Balls Summer Cash Machine.
Top pocket goal! Ahead of this summer's football in Australia, we're going to Australia.
It's what dreams are made of.
We'll be hosting a night of celebration for the Republic of Ireland women's national team in partnership with Sky, and it's coming your way on June 28th in the Mansion House in Dublin. What a moment for the Republic of Ireland. We'll be joined by the full squad.
I don't know what we've just done. I did believe we could do it.
As well as some other great guests as we give the team a night to remember. Emma Bird is in tears.
I can't believe it. We finally done it.
Tune in to all of Off the Ball's channels for a chance to win tickets to this exclusive event.
Sky, proud primary partners of the Republic of Ireland women's national team.
Out believe together, and we can go anywhere.
They are going to the World Cup Finals.
Karen, you were looking at Canada?
Yeah, just the old Olympic champions. No big deal.
Nothing much.
I think we've been so focused on. I anyway have been so focused on like the big opener against Australia that kind of forget the profile that Canada come into this tournament with. They're ranked sixth in the world. But most of the chat around them has been about the kind of industrialist dispute that's been going on. They haven't played a friendly since April. They haven't played, and they've no warm-up games, only behind closed door games, I think, when they get over there. So while they're stacked and they're coming into it and they've got a really, really strong squad, you just wonder in their heads, will there be a little bit like, this wasn't the ideal preparation for a World Cup, and can we like cling on to that hope that maybe there is still a bit of unrest there?
Yeah, I worry that they're going to come in though and be like, oh, we want to prove the Federation wrong, so we're going to like win.
Kathleen, we're being glass half full here. Green glasses, get your green glasses on.
We could start stirring a little bit, right? Like trying to plant some seeds.
Our Federation loves us now.
We just went on strike. I mean, if
you say something controversial, it'll be all over Twitter. It'll blow everything up.
You mean something like that might possibly be true, but you know what he's talking about? Okay.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
Yeah, so obviously Australia aren't the only challenge that we face in our World Cup group. That was Kathleen, Emma and Karen talking on this week's episode of Koi Gig about the challenge that we face against the Olympic champions Canada straight after the game against Australia. The Koi Gig pod on Off the Ball is in association with Cadbury, official snack partner to the Republic of Ireland women's national team. Now, Vinny Perth is with us. Vinny, good morning to you.
Good morning. How are we doing?
This game against Greece, I've been saying that it's hard to understate how important it is, but it's really seismic. It might turn out to be a boring 0-0 draw and everybody, we live to fight another day. But if we were to get tanked, very difficult to come back from. If we were to have one of those really important away wins, then all of a sudden it's like a shift in perception.
Yeah, you'd like to think it's a big moment. It's funny, the game has sort of gone under the radar, I feel, and like obviously when France come to town or there's a build up to it and you're in the middle of Premiership season, this seems a little bit low key, but actually I just hope that the week they've had away in Turkey, it sounds like they've had a good week. Sounds like a lot of them. I've been lucky enough to know a couple of internationals who've played football, and they don't like this window at all, right? Most of their mates are on holidays, and I know the normal fan don't understand that, but it is a difficult time. Premiership is over. You're then looking at getting back into pre-season. If you go back a week or two, it can have a knock-on effect in different stages, so it's a difficult window. But the music coming out of camp seems to be really good. Like, I know they watched a film together, and it was the Kevin Moran documentary, I believe. Okay. And like them things are great. They can be thrown back in your face, as we all know, at different stages. It was corny and all that stuff, or can really help. And But you get the sense there's a good mood around the camp at the moment. This has really helped them. I think it suits Stephen's style to be able to manage people, have cups of coffee with them at different stages around the pool or wherever it may be. And I think I hope this is a real chance for him to have a turning point, and we'll soon find out, because the match is really, really important, as you said.
And it's also an opportunity, if he's going to make subtle changes to how the team plays, to make sure that everybody fully understands exactly what they're trying to do.
Yeah, I think that's important, having time on the training ground. I know they played an 11v11 game. Again, you can't really do that in them small sort of bringing lads in on a Monday ahead of a Wednesday game. They're flying in through a Sunday night. Some might have played on a Sunday, etc. So I think that's important. And I know Stephen's style likes 11v11. There's lads in Dundalk would hear that we done a lot of 11v11s over them years, and it was his way of implementing what he wanted, and reviewing stuff. And to be honest with you, that's where, like, we'll all second guess teams and different things. That's where you may struggle, because he can see things in 11v11, and he's often made a change and went, no, that's not going to work, and I'm going to play a different team. Where me and him would discuss the team a week in advance, and then he'd make subtle changes as a result of that hard work on the training ground.
How serious are those games? I know, was it a 70-minute match that the Irish team played in camp? Like, are they competition for places? Is it taken a little bit easy, or is it hell for leather?
No, they're generally done in, I'd say they're done in blocks. I'd imagine the plan was probably 60 minutes, like sort of 15-minute blocks, and they are competitive, because people, what you try and do, where you get the holy grail, is it's a bit like, to use the sort of rugby analogy, the non-bibs are hugely important. So I would imagine they'd one team playing like Ireland are going to play, and another team would be set up the way Greece are going to play. So that's how you learn different things. And if the non-bibs play really well and gives you headaches, great, and that's their way of getting themselves put the hand up. So they're really interesting, they're fascinating, and they are played at a decent tempo. And normally whoever I've refereed them for years, it's one hell of a tough gig, I can tell you that much.
There were changes made by all accounts in the middle of the game.
Yeah,
the players were in one bib and then they were moved out. If you're getting moved out of the first choice bib, you're like, uh-oh, or you're like, yeah, that's my job's done, I'm happy.
There's lots of different ways of doing that. So you put a fella, like, if you know he's going to start and that's set in stone, you may give the backup a chance, and also keep him happy a little bit to say, I've had me little chance in the team. So there's a mixture of all them things. I wouldn't read too much into that. It's the night before the game, they'll do a shape, and that's when the team will be set and everyone know exactly who they are.
You've picked teams for us, but there's loads of different teams.
Okay, so yeah, and I found part of me tried to get in his head after 20 years. I don't know whether I can get into his head. So I suppose just me thinking was, does Ireland have potentially three different ways of playing? Okay, so I think in fairness, they play with a back three, and there's a couple of decisions, like we've a lot of players now who are out of season, championship players. It's been 4 or 5 weeks. We've got players like Darragh O'Shea, who's in the squad but hasn't played since the French game. So in my teams, I've left them out, but I'm not there this week, if that was happening out in Abbottstown, you get a feel for how Darragh is. So you're not 100% sure or how Darragh O'Shea is, but Darragh Lenihan, and that's where we've got real strength and depth in that position, has been exceptional on the left hand side of Middlesbrough's defence. So for me, the back three of Collins, Egan and Lenihan is really strong. As I said, it could be Darragh O'Shea in there.
Is the argument for O'Shea that he's been in that shape before with those two lads, so he knows?
Yeah, no, and it wouldn't shock me if O'Shea started. It's just he hasn't played since the French game, and this is, the others, like Collins hasn't overly played lots of football. Egan has been very good, winning promotion. So it's like Collins
has played football at the end of the season, and there's some talk that he might be available for a move.
Yeah, I don't see him. Right. I don't see that one. I just think it's O'Shea or Lenihan. That's the way I would see it. You've
also gone for Bazuna. That's not a conversation at all, is it?
No, I don't think so. I don't think Stephen will be very strong to his number one. O'Dowda and McLean is a discussion point. I the sound music from him in press and stuff is O'Dowda. He seems to gives him attacking try. I've gone with Mikey Johnson, and so this is the team where I look and go, I'm trying to see inside his head. So you go and win the game with someone like Mikey Johnson. Okay, you play an out and out winger off Ferguson who can drop in, pick up the ball in that area. We've seen him do it for Brighton, and you've got someone that has that sort of bit of dynamism in that final third. Okay, I'd like to think he is going over there we've got to win this game mindset and the squad. So Mikey Johnson has played exceptional as well up until recently. He's in really good form and playing week in, week out. So that's where in his head I'd like to think that's what he does.
And it's Cullen, Knight and Malumbi with Knight as kind of a 10.
Yeah, joining in and giving us that running power. And that's where so the Johnson one off Ferguson for me is really interesting. I think that could work. I think that would be Stephen's probably first wish in terms of that style of player. I think he loves the Mikey Johnson type of player, and as I said, he's seen him, he's playing regularly, and that puts him, for me, potentially ahead of others. But that's where it's a fascinating team, and like we don't have because he's had a week now, he can come up with different solutions here, and that's why I mentioned someone like, I've left Smallbone out, who's I think is going to become a hugely important player for Ireland, and he could get into the team ahead of Jason Knight as well. But because again, we don't know what we're seeing. Smallbone's sort of relationship with him and Ferguson are very close, and Stephen has spoken in the media about Matt Doherty and Smallbone sort of link-up play, so I wouldn't be shocked sort of to see Smallbone in the team. But again, when we go to the Smallbone team, you see it makes us, it's one change, Mikey Johnson out, Smallbone in, but you end up almost with that sort of box midfield, which I think could work away from home.
You've spoken about it before. You kind of expected him to go to one before this. So the box midfield is Cullen and Malumbi with Knight and Smallbone. So Cullen and Malumbi are level and deep lying, and Knight and Smallbone are the
But what
high
this
end of the
gives
box.
you is Jason Knight's ability to arrive in the box and pick up a goal, which is Smallbone is brilliant at it. We need running power away from home, but where we've lost Obenya is he joins in as a centre forward for Ireland and has done it successfully, and we're all happy with that. Small ball can do a little bit of the same and give you more sort of strength and depth in that midfield, and I think that's something they would have looked at. So effectively it's a bit like if you go back to maybe Chelsea have done it, it's a 3-4-2-1 sort of shape with two runners behind the centre forward, and Knight and Smallbone and Ferguson dropping in. That's exciting to me.
If you have for that team as well, Smallbone instead of Johnston, do you provide O'Dowda with more space potential?
Yeah, well, and you've got to remember O'Dowda is a sort of a winger. He's playing a lot of wing back now at Bristol, but he is a winger as such. So I like that team of Smallbone and Knight. I think now this is where, look, we'll get on to it maybe later. This is where a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of players getting minutes in games and having caps under the belt, that they go away, and we've got options now in that. So I like the idea of that. I think it's something that could really work. But that you can call it a box midfield, or you can say two sort of that number 10s, giving us running power, but also defensively, because we're going away from home against a 4-3-3 team.
Right. So that was the other thing. Are these tweaks based on what they expect Greece to do, or is this more we're going to try and get as much?
A mixture. We've got to get as much as what we have, but also Greece play a 4-3-3, and what Poyet does is we don't have a lot to go on and researching as much as it could, because they've played Gibraltar and won a handy, but they play 4-3-3 standard enough. But subtle difference is in his front three you play one out and out winger, which would probably be his right winger, and his left sided is actually a centre forward who joins in.
Okay,
so it's a bit like, I don't want to link to scare people, link Greece to France, but you know that style with Mbappe joining in as the second centre forward, they play that sort of way, and without the ball it can become a 4-4-2 for Greece.
Okay.
So that's the challenge. People will see that, so that will be our challenge. So therefore it's not that Ireland need to come up with a different system. We know what we're going to play. It is a back 3-4. It's how the front lines is configured and who's in form and who's playing regularly. And
is there a possibility that Mikey Johnson is still in the situation where he's a sub for Ireland because he just hasn't been around the camp enough, or
no, and
does that matter?
I think this week is different because if Mikey Johnson trains really well and is an exciting player in the sense of on the training ground, and they play the 11v11 games, and he's joining in drills where they're doing shooting drills, he can convince that manager that I'm ready to play, and I think that's the type of manager he is.
Jamie McGrath kind of came from nowhere to start that game against Portugal that time and played really well, and nobody.
Yeah, and I think the reference McGrath is really important to say. Away from home or like that, Jason Knight has done it, but McGrath's performance in Portugal, if you remember, from that sort of box midfield position, was joining in, but also the intelligence of the recovery run.
Yeah. Okay. So what's your third team, and then I'll ask.
Well, then the third team is dropping in Obafemi, and effectively it is similar team to what we've always had. Obafemi will do the same role as Chidozie Obenye. I don't think he will. I don't think he'll do that same role to the same level, but basically one of the strikers dropping into a wide area to give a little bit of defensive cover when Greece have the ball.
It's really Ferguson who'll do that role then, isn't it? That you're
well, Ferguson will more likely drop into midfield, and I think Obafemi would have to sort of probably operate off the right hand side of it as such, and do, as I said, what Chidozie does. But again, he hasn't played enough football, and that's the problem with the whole Irish team. I'm looking at the knock-on effect with playing Matt Doherty, playing Nathan Collins, playing Darragh O'Shea, and it's for the first time when I was sitting through this yesterday trying to come up with a team going, you can't play them all if they're not playing. You've got to find a balance, and as I said, that training week they've had is huge for them, and we're in a difficult situation going into this game with the amount of people who haven't played regular football.
How do you make up for that?
You to be fair to the FAI, you get yourself onto a plane and you get the lads to train. They did meet in Bristol a week ago or 2 weeks ago. Yeah. Got a bit of extra stuff into their legs, but it's really, really difficult. I would say Greece are probably a little bit better prepared. They've got a lot of players who are playing regularly up until a later date than we do. So it's difficult. It's really, really difficult, and you can't play, as I said, too many players who haven't played regularly altogether.
Doherty's in all three of your teams. That there's no discussion there, is there?
No, only because I think he's sort of Stephen's man and his go-to man in that position. I don't see. Alan Brown hasn't played loads of football due to an injury.
Yeah, he's been doing hydrotherapy over in Turkey as well.
So I don't see, and it's not that we don't have huge options there, I just see Matt Doherty starting. That's where you'll make an allowance for Matt Doherty, but you won't make an allowance for 6 players or 7 players who haven't played regularly. You've got to come up with that balance, and no, Matt Doherty I would expect to start again. If he's training is shambolic for the week, you'll have serious questions, but I'd expect it's good enough from what I'm hearing.
Okay, so what's your expectation?
I'm going to say to you, for no scientific reasons other than I actually fancy Ireland to win this week. I think there's a huge turning point, and it has to come eventually for Stephen Kenny, and may not come. He may be, he may be like myself, an unemployed coach, but I expect this is a big turning point. I think people have to realise, and it's not to make an excuse before the game starts, but we're playing against a team who are very similar to ourselves, gone through all the same transition. You go back to when Greece won the Euros, they were brutal to watch, and the public weren't happy, and they've made a big change, and they may own the ball a little bit. Their seeding is a bit, or they're
3 behind us in the world rankings.
So it's not like we're not playing a minnow here, and people Greece and won't know the names, but these are a good side. But I have a good feel-good factor about this Ireland team going into this camp. I think a lot of the heavy lifting is done. As I said, I could have got the teams completely wrong, but the difference now is you're talking about players who have caps. There's a huge amount of heavy lifting being done to get them to this position. Now it's like, and I hate the lazy word, 2 steps forward, 1 back. We've had a little bit of that. I would say sometimes we've had sort of 2 steps forward, or 1 step forward and 1 back. It hasn't been as bad as people say, but this feels like a huge moment for this management setup, and I just really hope it goes their way.
Yeah, all right, Vinny, good stuff. Thanks a million.
Thank you.
Vinny and myself are going to be watching the game live on Friday evening on Off the Ball on News Talk. In the meantime, though, it's 22 minutes past 9 this morning. You're watching OTB AM. We're live with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now. It's time for Deal or No Deal.
Hi, Royce. Matty Taylor. I can see him getting his car. I've decided to go to Bolt and waving him going out the car.
Just love moving teams, and then you have to do an initiation.
They just don't seem to be able to get deals over the line.
Who is going to be getting deals over the line? Phil Egan, good morning to you. How are you?
How you doing, lads?
The general state of the transfer window. I saw somebody saying it's officially open today. What does that mean?
It opens, yeah. It's been shut because it's slammed shut. Obviously, the last time closed.
Why the 14th? It's a random date opening, is it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any reason for it. They just pick a date. But I always think that it's not really when it opens. It's all about when it closes. I think the fact that, remember, they tried it one season where they tried to finish it up before a bit earlier, but. Because it was for the Premier League, for example, it wasn't in line with the rest of Europe, so it actually created more problems, and clubs were missing out on players because those later deals, actually players went to other clubs around Europe. But yeah, like deals have already been done, but I suppose now it's going to start getting even more ridiculous, is what I would say. Okay, and sorry, I don't mean to put you on the spot here, but when does it actually close? I would imagine it's the end of August. Okay. It's not because there was summer transfer window opens. Oh no, summer transfer window will close in England at 11 p.m. Friday, September the 1st. So yeah, Europe's top 5 leagues also the same date. Yeah, that's good. So that wasn't the case a few years ago. They tried. I'd say they tried it. Didn't. They were trying to get it to the end of to the start of the season. Yeah, and then there was a couple of weeks where no one really knew what was going on or how it was going to work after that. So okay, it is officially open today, and it's opened with a big fish, the biggest fish in world football, Kylian Mbappe, who will be out of contract at the end of next season and will be available to leave Paris Saint-Germain for free, and so therefore pocket all the cash that the club would get. He wrote to them and said, I'm not going to be taking up your kind offer of an extra year on that contract, so I'm going to play for you until the end of next season, and then I'll leave on a free transfer. And they were like, well, we will see about that. So what's going to happen here? Well, this deal, or if it goes through or not, could have a serious knock-on effect of what happens around the rest of Europe in terms of, obviously Real Madrid need a striker. Now, saying that, is Mbappe a striker? He would kind of play in the Vinicius role, right? That's the thing. I mean, and Vinicius is pretty good. Now, if Vinicius decided to leave Spain, I think we could all understand why, given the horrible time he's had the last few years, all the racial abuse, and he keeps going out on the pitch and he keeps producing these excellent performances. So Vinicius and Mbappe, could they play in the same team? Of course they could, because they're quality operators. But if a deal was to go through for Real Madrid to get Mbappe, then I suppose if you're Daniel Levy, then Tottenham, because Harry Kane's been linked with a move to Real Madrid, and if you're Tottenham, you'd have no problem selling to Real Madrid as opposed to one of your Premier League rivals, which he is always linked with Manchester United. So if the Mbappe deal goes through as well, then that's Real signing Mbappe and Jude Bellingham. That's a lot of money to pay over the summer. Does that mean they have to let a player go? What position is that player in? It comes back to, maybe is it Vinicius?
If two things happen, if Kane does go to Madrid and Sheikh Yassim wins the takeover of Manchester United, is Mbappe to Old Trafford a serious possibility, or is that pie in the sky?
Well, it's something that you would see a lot of talk about, and I already have seen it, and that's why transfers just circulate such excitement from football fans. Just even the prospect of that gets United fans excited.
Just the thought of Mbappe in the Premier League, generally speaking, is exciting.
Say you wanted to, win over the slightly reluctant Manchester United fans to rally behind your takeover of the club, even though there might be some questionable issues around human rights and all that kind of things that football fans sometimes care about and sometimes don't, depending on who's asking the question. Would you perhaps leak that the greatest footballer in the world might be the first signing that you make if you were to take over?
Could soften the blow, couldn't it?
There's a little bit of free public relations advice.
Well, Cristiano Ronaldo was a PR signing for United fans.
Yeah, but that's Mbappe's 24 and
that's a massive.
Still has his best football ahead of him. We would assume, and
speaks perfect English as well.
Yeah.
Like, these things count.
In terms of Harry Kane, I've always felt though he doesn't want to leave the Premier League. I think he wants that record. He wants to be the Premier League's all-time leading scorer. And
we did discuss this just recently on the show, and the point was made that he could easily do 2 seasons at Real Madrid and then come back to anybody in the Premier League and score the remaining 25 goals over 3 or 4 years, because Harry Kane's game's not really based on pace.
No, well, we've seen in the last few seasons that he kind of has no problem withdrawing from attacks and being a playmaker as well.
And could he play as long as Sheringham if he wanted? If there was a record there to be chased, he probably could.
Sheringham still looks like he could play, by the way.
Yeah,
I saw the video of him there during the week. But yeah, it's, as I said, the Mbappe thing. Look, I mean, it might just go through the whole summer of will he, won't he, and then he actually does stay at PSG and then he plays out a season. But one thing that is quite certain is PSG's trying to attempt to try and win the Champions League with all these superstars hasn't worked, and they're actually further away from it than they have been for a while. They got to the final a few years ago, but even that final was when there was the mini tournament during COVID and they were playing one-off games, and they could have won it, but they didn't. And Messi's gone. Talk that Neymar's going to go. Imagine they lost those 3 in the space of a few weeks.
Yeah, I think they're going to get Marco Asensio, aren't they? So they'll still have a glittering array of attacking talent.
Yeah.
And I can also see a situation where they just decide to keep Mbappe for one more season, hope that they can turn the situation round in terms of him and his contract. But it does look like at that stage the right thing for him to do would be to go to Real Madrid. So what, over on balance, on the rate out of 10, where's Kylian Mbappe playing next season? Is it most likely Spain? And obviously in that case it would have to be Real Madrid.
Yeah, I think if he does go, it's going to be to Real Madrid. But I just don't know if he will go. This is the thing about transfers and reports and speculation, that we don't really know what's going on, and we don't know why all this has come out in the last few days. I mean, there was Mbappe saying, I told you that last summer that was going to be the case. So it's all about who has the position of power, and representatives will throw things out there as well. So it's become a big soap opera, and as I said, people love it. I mean, between now and the 1st of September, people will be just going through all sorts of different emotions because their club is linked to a player and they think this might happen, and then it gets pulled at the last minute, but then we find out actually it was never going to happen.
Yeah.
But it's good for certain players to be linked with certain clubs, and it's good for certain clubs to be linked with certain players.
One that has happened is Alexis McAllister to Liverpool. I saw an interesting comment from Jimmy Carragher yesterday where he was saying, look, he has everything. He can play in different positions, Alexis McAllister. The one thing is, a lot of these great players that have left Brighton have maybe struggled after they've left Brighton, and that could be down to just how good the system is at Brighton, and De Zerbi and Potter before then. Is there any danger of that happening with McAllister, or is he just too good to not be a success?
Well, no, I mean, he's a World Cup winner. He's at that age of 24, which Liverpool like, and just that kind of, the way you described what happens with players that leave Brighton, you could say something similar of players that leave Liverpool, the Klopp's players, where they go somewhere else and it doesn't work out for them. But he has all the attributes to be a success in the Liverpool team, and I think what you'll see with Liverpool is, and they've tried to do it, is be more of a technical, have more technical ability in midfield, where we saw when they lost the ball last season how exposed they were, but obviously if you have a better technical ability in midfield, you're not going to lose the ball as often as they were. And I think you would imagine he's going to play in one of those more advanced roles, and then they still need bodies in there. They need energy, where they need players that, if they do lose the ball, they can get it back for you straight away. And by the way, he does that as well.
He's straight into the team sheet as well. Like, he's not a player that comes in and out of the team. Like, Klopp doesn't tend to do that too often. If he likes a player, he plays him.
Yeah, but what Klopp does do is he gives a few months to kind of work out the system and how to play, and it can frustrate Liverpool fans at times where they look at this player and they think, why haven't they played? Did it with Fabinho, and all of a sudden then he came in. So it's I think I've always felt they needed at least 3 midfielders, so they have one. It'll be interesting to see what they do in terms of defence. They need another centre half. Do they go with a right back? Calvin Ramsey's going on loan to Preston. He played 93 minutes in total last season due to injuries. So will they go after another right back because they want to push Trent Alexander-Arnold on? They can use Trent Alexander-Arnold in both positions if they want. They can use him in that hybrid role where or they could actually maybe start him as a midfielder. Said I had my doubts whether he'd be good enough to play as one of the 3 midfielders, but certainly the glimpses, it's a small sample size that we saw towards the end of the season. He looks like he could do it. It just reinvigorated him. So but if he has to play in that hybrid role, which obviously we've seen John Stones do for Manchester City, that Trent Alexander-Arnold has shown that he can do it.
Yeah. Okay. The signing of Declan Rice to Arsenal looks almost like a done deal at this stage. I'd be very surprised if it doesn't happen, given how far down the line and how publicly the whoever's briefing the papers have got to the deal is agreed, the price is agreed, the personal terms are agreed. There's still some haggling going on about something which we're not quite sure about. Maybe they're waiting for the international window to close and then it becomes a done deal.
Yeah, well, he is away with the England squad at the moment, and there was a contrasting talk coming out of the game last week when they won the Conference League. Then again, Declan Rice is hardly going to say in his post-match interview after just lifting the Conference League for the club that, yeah, that's me done, I'm out of here. He has to be respectful in what he says. I mean, then David Sullivan comes out the next day and said, yeah, we told him he can go. It seems like a lot of money. Like, I watched that final last week, and it was, you're looking at him and Amrabat going, you can get Amrabat for half the price. But I know English players, there is a tax added to it. You have to have a certain amount of homegrown players in your squad. We just talked about McAllister there. Another player that had been linked with Liverpool was Mason Mount, and you'd have to pay twice the amount for Mason Mount than Alexis McAllister, and that's where the transfer market can be skewed. But again, sometimes huge price tags, they get forgotten about if a player hits the ground running. And
Grealish all of a sudden 100 million, you're like,
people aren't even talking about it. They're talking about more about how he had a really good season and he seems to be enjoying himself off the pitch now for the last few days. But why did he have a good season with Manchester City? He realised that to play for Pep Guardiola, he was going to have to work his absolute backside off, and he did it. And I actually think back to, there was a game when they played Liverpool where Liverpool were 1-0 up in that game and City go on to win, but Grealish prevents Liverpool from scoring a second goal, and then a couple of minutes later he's setting up the City goal. So the penny dropped with him. Very quickly, 2 of our potential World Cup attendees, Amber Barrett, who I really hope is on the plane just for emotional reasons. I think it'd be a crying shame if she doesn't, has joined Standard Liège, quietly putting together an incredible career of European experience, and so hopefully again, like when her playing days are over, she'll come back and be an important voice in the league at some level, and in helping our best young players to go and not just focus on the WSL for the future of their career. But anyway, so she's got Standard Liège, and Niamh Fahey signed a contract extension at Liverpool. Yeah, and Niamh Fahey's been on the continent as well, and several of our players have been. Diane Caldwell's another one, which would have played a lot of football in Germany. Louise Quinn's story is so interesting, where she was sending clips to clubs to basically show this is what I can do, and it just shows. Now, this is why it's so important, though, that the Women's Premier Division and Women's National League here gets its ducks in a row and make sure that players can develop here. And if they want to go off and play in Europe, that's fine, but that they don't have to if they don't want to. Yeah. And then it's not all about the WSL. What I can see at the moment is the WSL is becoming so good that it's very similar to what happened with the Premier League, where we have players playing in the WSL, but they're getting squeezed out of their clubs now, and they're starting to appear in the Championship. Now, the Championship is still a very good standard, but if it keeps going that way, then you get a situation like we have with the men's team where there's more focus on developing players here. And that's why that goes back to what the FAI were proposing last week when they released their strategic vision, that it is so important that if we want... Look, here we are. When this World Cup kicks off on the 20th of July, it's going to be amazing. More than 80,000 people there. And this is class. But we have to make sure that this isn't a once off. Like, now is the time. And this is why the FAI were thinking, it came up that women's football, the growth of women's football is just going at a rapid rate. And we need to be able to keep up with it.
Yeah, and that's why I think at least the document has a plan in place in a way that there wouldn't have been when the team in the 90s broke through. All right, that's the first of the new official transfer window.
We're back.
Deal or no deal open. Phil, good stuff. Thanks a million.
Nice lads.
Hi, Royce. Matty Taylor. I can see him getting his car. I've decided to go to Bolton. I'm waving him going out the car park.
Just love moving teams, and then you have to do an initiation.
They just don't seem to be able to get deals over the line.
Peter M says, is it not an idea to play Brown as one of the 10s? He always has a goal in him, arrives late in the box and it's good defensively. I think they were looking at him more as a right wing back, and so therefore a sub to come on if we need one at right wing back, which we may well do because Doherty hasn't played that much football. Siobhan Doyle has been in touch. Hey Siobhan, good morning to you. To say to Tommy, stick it on the dressing room wall. Can't wait to throw rotten strawberries at Tommy, Rooney and roar, where's your power rankings now? After Wexford cruised to a 27-point victory in Park Talchin, one for every place we are in at Off the Ball AM's power rankings. Ronan Fagan on Twitter says, Wexford GA below Leitrim, New York and Wicklow. Yeah, hand me the pin and find me a dressing room wall. That's the whole point of the power rankings. You've got to convince Tommy that somehow his algorithm is wrong, and the only way to do it is on the field of play. Offaly didn't give the Talchin Cup any respect. Their last two games were god awful. They didn't even have enough lads to have a full match day panel. Loads of lads left for the States, etc. after the Louth game. And Kenny the dad says heat in Monaghan in May equals 14 degrees.
Damn right. Look at this. Look at my skin. Like, it's at 14 and I'm starting to burn here. It's enough for me.
That's today's show. We're live with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave of your money back. Neon Night Edition is available now. On Thursday's show, Keith Woods, Joe Malloy's US Open preview, a look ahead to the weekend's GA, and plenty more besides. Right now, Gabriele Marcotti talking about Silvio Berlusconi. Have a great day.
So I'm sure you've seen the news at this stage. Silvio Berlusconi has passed away at the age of 86. Italy's longest serving post-war leader, Prime Minister on 3 occasions, and of course AC Milan owner for 30 plus years as well. He died in Milan Hospital. He had been fighting leukemia in recent times. An extraordinary life in many ways, and to tease it out and give us his thoughts, Gab Marcotti, I'm very happy to say, is with us. Gab, great to have you on.
Great to be with you.
A general reaction in the Italian media to Berlusconi's passing?
Well, obviously, he had so many dimensions, right? There was a football sphere, there was a media sphere, there was a construction sphere, and then there was a political sphere as well. And he was exceptionally polarizing, but I don't think it's a stretch to say that, he really dominated. He dominated Italy's consciousness probably and was hugely relevant, goodness me, for at least 30 years, from the mid 80s until the mid 2010s. And even today, even very recently, he was still active in politics, although not as important as before.
Just to briefly chart how he arrived in the 1980s as such an influential person. 1930s, as I've been reading, and I didn't know a lot of this in advance of talking to you, but born to a pretty well-to-do upper middle-class Milan family. His father is in banking. It is in the 60s, Gab, where he really makes his fortune. The Italian post-war construction boom is kicking off, and Berlusconi, clearly, amongst many failings, I'm sure, which we can come to, is a very smart man and is a force of personality, and he makes his fortune.
Yeah, I mean, I think originally he did it through construction, but I think where it really went to the next level was he was just an exceptional salesman. You know, he gave off this image of modernity, this image of success, which, you know, now maybe looks a little bit dated. And so he started building both residential and commercial properties around Milan and around the north of Italy. What took him to the next level was he did something that was very clever. In the late 70s, Italy, like other European countries, essentially deregulated television and allowed for private investors to own local television stations, but they were not allowed to own national television stations. The thinking was that would give people too much influence and so on. So what he did at the time was he bought a local station in Milan and then bought other local stations throughout the country, and he basically got them to broadcast the same shows at the same time. So ostensibly these were all local stations and they had local logos in Milan and Turin and Florence and whatnot, but they all had the same shows on at the same time, which means all of a sudden the stuff that he was putting out there had a national audience, and that allowed him to sell national advertising rather than just local advertising. And that really put him on the map. And then he quickly acquired other major networks, and he became essentially, the biggest commercial television provider in Italy, owning 3 of the 6 biggest networks, and the other 3, of course, were all state-owned.
And this presumably makes him unbelievably wealthy, right man, right time. Because I was reading his fortune at the time of his passing is estimated at 7 billion, which is extraordinary figure. So this makes him enough money to buy Milan. This makes him a major player in Italian life in a whole host of ways.
Yeah, I mean, he. It's really funny because interesting. He became really wealthy. I mean, I'm skeptical about all those lists about what somebody's fortunes is, whether it's Elon Musk or the Forbes list of clubs or whatever. But he's obviously very wealthy. He made certain choices in that time, which everybody around him said were the wrong choices, his closest advisors. The first one, because people said these are going to be polarizing, right? So, the second one was going into politics, which everybody said this is really, really bad because you'll anger half the country, and he did. The other one was buying AC Milan, which he did, I want to say, in 1986, I think. The idea being, wow, all of a sudden, you're going to alienate fans of Inter, fans of Juventus, fans of rival clubs. But he was very smart in the way he did it, because he said, I'm going to turn Milan into an aspirational club. I'm going to shake European football, not just Italian football, to their foundations. And he poured a lot of money in and made some very inspired choices. People no doubt remember his first Milan sides with Arrigo Sacchi as the manager, and Marco Van Basten, Franco Baresi, Ruud Gullit, Donadoni, Maldini, all those guys. But what he also did was he kind of realized that football's entertainment, and so many of the things, and they may rub traditionalists the wrong way, but that we take for granted today that are part and parcel, for example, of the Premier League, these are things that he wanted to do then. Everything from, having names on the back of shirts, and he wasn't allowed to do that, to merchandising, having shops, having club shops selling team kits, and a whole bunch of other stuff just simply with a club logo on it, going on tours around the world. He took his Milan team to Asia, to North America, to South America, really building the brand. The European Super League, he was the early proponent back in the 1990s with the Media Partners Group. He really, really pushed this side. He really pushed the entertainment side. He talked about how he didn't want his team to win. He wanted him to be attractive. And this was a really, really big part of how he saw the game. And there are some people who believe that had he stayed more engaged in Milan and not gone into politics, he would have revolutionized football even more than he did.
So in '86, he is still 8 years away from becoming Prime Minister. He will win, under his stewardship, 5 European Cups. Milan will win their first ever Serie A. You mentioned Sacchi, who of course...
It wasn't their first ever Serie A. They'd won it before, but it was their first Serie A title since 1979.
Oh, sorry. Okay, I must have misread that. I thought it was their first in 100 years or something.
No.
Okay, well, something of a famine. You mentioned Sacchi there, who's famously plucked from Division 1 at that stage, like the second tier Italian football. Is Berlusconi very much behind decisions like that? And also, he has talked about, or I've read, that he was genuinely innovative, not just on the commercial side of football, as you've outlined, but also in how a football team should be prepared. Like Milan, we know about the lab, of course, I think very famously at this stage, but, right off the bat from the 80s, there was cutting-edge innovation on Berlusconi's part. Is that fair?
Oh, 100%. You mentioned Milan Lab, which is basically, again, today we take these things for granted, right? Yeah. Back then, sports science was very much in its infancy. So he created a whole sort of sports science department. He had sports psychologists there who were present. He was the first person or one of the first people to have the whole concept of something like squad rotation, for example, which again, today we take for granted. But I remember one season, he almost played a different 11 in the league than he did in the cup competitions. The idea to keep the players fresh. At one point, he decided that it was really important to learn from other sports. So he acquired a rugby team, a volleyball team, and an ice hockey team. He put Fabio Capello in charge of all three, and he said, right, you're going to learn these sports and how they work, and you're going to learn what can be then applied to football. And it's not like all these ideas worked out, and some of them didn't. Some of them were frankly, with hindsight, foolish. But he always sold them as brilliant ideas. I mean, he was exceptionally charming, and at the time, people thought, everything he touched really turned to gold. He really had this Midas sense of excitement and innovation and so on. And, and this was at a time when most of the rest of Europe was very much and most of the rest of Serie A as well, of course, was very much in the dark ages.
To what extent then was he an overbearing presence in the years of Sacchi and Capello? Pick him, do it that way, play this 11, then that 11?
Oh, he was definitely very, very present. Really, I think right up until the late 2000s, he was very, very much involved. He loved getting involved in transfers and, talking to officials at other clubs personally and to players personally to try to convince them to come. I've gotten to know several Milan managers who worked under him in that era very well, and some of them are aligned to him politically, some of them are most definitely not, but all of them said, he was always there. He always wanted to know. He was always part of the conversation, and he's actually pretty knowledgeable. He was not a fool. Certainly in those years, he worked very hard to try to stay abreast of everything. He liked the personal relationship with the players. Later on, it probably led to some poor decisions. But at that time in the 90s, I'd say it was probably an integral part of his success.
Yeah. Did he have a favorite team? If the Sacchi team, the Capello team, and then that last blast with Ancelotti?
No, I think his favorite team would be the 88-89 team that, they won the European Cup, which Milan hadn't won since 1969. That team beat Steaua Bucharest in the final 4-0. But I think and I stand to be corrected, but I think what impressed him was the semi-final against Real Madrid. They won 5-0, 5 different goal scorers, including Carlo Ancelotti, but also I think, I'm not sure about Van Basten, but Ruud Gullit scored, Donadoni scored. I mean, it's just one of the great dominating one-sided performances between European royalty.
Yeah.
And I think that would probably be his favorite team.
Am I right in saying he serenaded Ruud Gullit when he was trying to sign him?
It's entirely possible. He early in his career, now it's true that he was born into money and is obviously, but it's not like his dad was a billionaire.
Yeah.
His dad was a guy who worked in a bank and could approve loans, and he always prided himself on working. And so I think it was while he was at university, he worked on cruise ships, and one of the things that he did on the cruise ship was, and he does have a very nice singing voice. He essentially sang. He provided evening entertainment for extra tips, and was a favorite of the older ladies, apparently.
You mentioned then politics. So from 94 on, he's Prime Minister. I'd be curious to get your sense of this, because I've seen it said, obviously, down the years. To what extent did they intersect in his decision-making over buying players, selling players? Because I don't know where causation and correlation come in, but certainly they would pinpoint certain signings or certain players being sold with regard to when the next election is coming up. Were these things intersecting to that extent?
I don't think so, because by that point, I mean, we may be a little backward in Italy, but we're not totally in the Stone Age. People recognize the people who voted for Berlusconi early on, or many of the swing voters, were former Christian Democratic voters. Christian Democratic Party had been in power either by themselves or in a coalition since the end of the war, and they were in power essentially. And I don't think I'm saying anything controversial here, because the second biggest party in Italy was the Communist Party. We had the biggest Communist Party in Europe. Look at between 30 and 35% of the vote, and for obvious reasons during the Cold War, there was this fear that they were just never going to get into power. Nobody would form a coalition with them. That's what happens when you're part of NATO and part of the West and there's a Cold War. And the Christian Democratic Party, being a very, very broad church, like other parties, fell victim to this massive corruption scandal. And he was seen as the outsider coming into politics to clean things up. The guy who was socially very, very centrist, even politically, originally, he presented himself as kind of more free market oriented. But I think a lot of that kind of went out the window pretty early on, and he just became kind of like a populist. I think effectively he was a populist centrist, and who later on formed alliances with some people who, in my opinion, probably a little bit unsavory to the right of him. But that was kind of always his message, was sort of this very folksy message. He was really never driven by ideology. I think, as critics would say, he was driven by the fact that he had so many criminal proceedings against him.
Yeah.
I think there's still 15, 17 open. The wheels of justice grind very slowly in Italy. And he remained in politics to gain different forms of immunity, to be able to kind of slow the proceedings against him down. I think that's the general perception, certainly from his critics.
Well, circling to politics in a moment, just one last one on Milan then. Sells the club in 2017, does very well out of the sale. That last decade, by comparison with the first 2/3 of his tenure, are awful. What happened?
I think, well, this is the thing, right? I mean, as great as he was in the first part, I think the wheels completely came off towards the end. I think he became so enmeshed and so embroiled in his political affairs and his legal affairs that either again, his fans would say that, oh, well, he couldn't look after Milan the way he wanted to. His critics would say, no, he still got involved with Milan. It's just that he was old and made stupid decisions. Whatever the case may be, for Milan, it was kind of like a lost decade. They weren't good. They accumulated a lot of debt. And ultimately, he sold the club, and he sold the club to, I think I can say this, I don't think he's going to sue us, one of the worst possible actors out there. And there's still a lot of question marks around the sale. He sold the club to this Chinese investor named Li Yonghong, who, even back then in the era of Chinese billionaires, few people in China even were familiar with him more. And few said, yeah, he really is a billionaire. He did well out of the sale in the sense that he sold it for, I think, 740 million euros, if memory serves. That included about 200 million euros of debt. However, this fella, Li Yonghong, as it turned out, he only had part of the money. So he was able to, I think he paid about 200 million. The rest he had to borrow, which he borrowed from an American hedge fund called Elliott Management. And then this guy, Li Yonghong, eventually defaulted. And when he defaulted, because he put Milan up as collateral, Elliott took over the club. And by all accounts have run it very well since then. So there's still this mystery about why he sold to Li Yonghong. Where did Li Yonghong get the money, even the initial 200 million that he did pay back to Berlusconi? Obviously the rest he borrowed. But again, that was a really, really poor decision on his part. And again, I think it was just old age, distractions with other things, just wanting at the end to get out.
Yeah. And the last one on his kind of relationship with Milan, did you get the sense that for the majority of his time owning the club, he was one way or another watching every game? There was like a childhood fan aspect there. There was still a sense of wonder, or had it very much become just a plaything and a touch more pragmatic about it all?
Oh, no. This isn't Sheikh Mansour. This is a guy who showed up to almost every game, was always very happy. He's always been very good with the media, very, very accessible. And I think he also loved to talk about, especially after he entered politics, he loved to talk about Milan because, it meant he wasn't talking about politics or his legal issues or whatnot. So, no. There's no question that, I think even his biggest critics, and he's got many massive ones, will tell you that what he did for Milan, he did because he was a fan. He was a fan from day one. He really, really loved the club and the players who came through it. He didn't do this out of self-interest. Had it been out of self-interest, he would have gotten out of it many, many years before he did.
Okay. On the political front then, so Prime Minister for the first time in 94, he would lead three governments, 01 to 06, he came back, and by Italian standards, that was a long stint. I think that those 5 years had been the longest since World War II. And then he was back again, 08 to 11, obviously, world in crisis around that time. Another comeback in 17 attempted and ended up in the European Parliament in 2019. So there's a Teflon quality here. I did see the Italian Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni, said he was a man who was never afraid to stand up for his convictions. As you've alluded to, I haven't seen a single other person talk about Berlusconi as having an ideology or having convictions. I read the criticism this morning that his dealings with the far right completely, the charge is very fair to say he completely reopened the door to neo-fascism in Italy.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back.